right. Well, hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. Nice to see you here today. We have got ourselves a interesting show with TFT, the first actual episode of it. Last week we talked about what we wanted to do and kind of did that setup. But here we are actually today going to be doing it. And of course, our inaugural point that we're going to be talking about here, of course, is Area 51, and in particular, aliens. Now, I know that, you know, everyone has their opinion on what an alien is, but I personally enjoy the conversation. I think it's a very interesting topic because I think there's more than one answer that is viable.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, YouTube is being very unfriendly today, as it usually is. So I'm going to have to be jumping back and forth over to the other side to be able to read your chats. So be a little patient with me today. I usually have more direct access to it, but yay, YouTube. Anyway, I know some people are saying, Chester, it's daylight savings time. And Chester is saying, well, Chester knew that, and Chester had prepared for it, but Chester prepared for it on the 21st, which is the spring equinox. And then someone's telling me, oh, no, we do it earlier. And it's like, why? Why? But hey, who am I to
It's a, con-
defy the logic of the American
it's a
government?
conspiracy to rob us all of time. That's
It
all it
might be.
is.
It might be. But I do see we got a bunch of people in here. We got Nick, of course. Hello, Nick. We got Joshua, our favorite trolls over here. Kat's here, and she says hello, everybody. Dave is here as well, and he says daylight saving times was implemented by Woodrow Wilson, the same progressive Democratic prick who gave us the Federal Reserve Bank and Internal Revenue Service. Oh, thank you. He's a wonderful guy. Um, uh, of course, joining me today, I got a couple of people who are actually down in there and chatting in the chat. But let me introduce them and say hi. So let's come back over here. So hello, guys. How you doing? I got start with Model 3. How you doing, Model?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I am awesome, dude. And looking forward to it. It's been pretty exciting this week waiting to do the show because last weekend when we did our introductory conversation about it, a lot of people got excited about being involved with it because, conspiracy theories are a lot of fun, right? I mean, it's just good entertainment. It's good conversation. It's easy conversation because no one is right or wrong. And that's the good thing
Well,
about
I
it.
love them. I've met
Yeah.
very few conspiracies I didn't get along with.
Yeah. Me too.
And for everyone out there listening, have some fun because people. This does make people mad. Sometimes people get very angry about this stuff. Look at it like an academic exercise and have some fun with it.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is just good fun. Don't take it too seriously at all, guys. This is just you're going to be looking and talking about the various concepts and ideas, and I'm going to do a little bit different than I do today. I did prepare some stuff, as you see. I had showed Area 51 here right off the bat, and oh, did you like my new intro? I thought it was very simple, but it was cool, spooky.
It was
Spooky.
spectacular. I liked it a lot, actually.
TFT, baby. What I do need to do is get a hold of one of these amazing artists that are absolutely everywhere around me and have them do a shiny metallic TFT because I don't know how to do that. I'm a boomer, of course, but nevertheless. But yeah, guys, keep it simple. We're here to have some fun, and we don't want to get too serious about it. But I'm also, of course, as you guys have heard, I am joined by the man, the myth, the legend, Lord of Thunder, Thundero.
Hello, Chester. I actually just sent you something in our little Facebook chat. If you notice, you know how YouTube does this new thing now where if you talk about certain topics, they put a little thing underneath of your video to show you, to debunk it or to tell you the real thing on it. We've already acquired their attention because with the title Area 51, right underneath of it is a little Encyclopedia Britannica link talking about Area 51.
Absolutely.
No way,
I saw
really?
that was up for the preview, for
Yep.
the upcoming show. It was already up. So
Really?
the algorithm caught that keyword and hit it.
I feel special, man. I got attention from the
So-
YouTube.
The YouTube.
What we should do is completely throw it off,
Mhm.
and let's talk about areas 23, 47, and
I
49.
agree, dude. I agree. The funny thing about that is that maybe since that is an algorithm that did that, obviously it's not some person, but
Mhm.
maybe that is why I'm having some access issues right now. That I'm
It
It
having
could
to.
be.
very well could be, and there are a few like I would the school up there in Connecticut, I would never use that title in a video name. There's certain ones you just don't want to do. If you do anything on NASA or a moon landing, they do the same thing. They tag the video with Wikipedia and Encyclopedia Britannica
Wow, these guys
on
have
the
no sense of humor whatsoever.
not at all.
Wait, the school in Connecticut, you mean Xavier's School for the Gifted?
Oh, that's a great one. I
Yes.
like that one particularly.
That one seems to set it off where they just shut down channels.
Oh wow. Well, we'll see how things go, but I will do my best to jump back and forth. Matter of fact, maybe today it would be a little bit easier if one of you guys paid attention to the chat and could read them off periodically for me, because it's a
I
little.
am always paying attention to the chat.
Oh,
It
cool.
is my
All right.
duty to
All right.
strike down all
That's
who
true.
disobey.
That is true. Dave says,
I'll
I'm
watch
not a
Little Night.
conspiracy theorist. I'm a conspiracy analyst. Yeah, because I got a lot of stuff to do in the bag, so having to keep jumping back over to read the chat is a hassle, which I will do. But if you will take care of that for me, Thunder, that would be awesome. And besides,
I sure
you
will.
got the nice God of Thunder voice, and that's always nice. But as you guys see, we're also joined by somebody else, and he's come as the skeptic, I'm sure, and we need that. We need the skeptic. So, hello, Mr. Skeptic, Mr. DeWolf. How you doing?
I'm not sure if I'm quite the skeptic on this so much as some of the other days when we're talking about comics and comic movies.
That's true. That's true. But between you and Model 3, I think we're covered on the skeptical. I think Thundaro and I shall take the, oh my God, aliens! And you guys will be like, all right, calm down, young man.
Well, that is
So
true.
It'll be good. We're pretty good. We're balanced, 50-50. It's nice. But
That's right.
anyway, thank you for coming, DeWolf. And guys, yeah, we have Area 51 is a very interesting thing. Let me bring that pic back up for you. Now, here is a picture, of course, Area 51. As many of you know, it's actually the Groom-like installation. And I do believe it has another name, which I'll jump over to that in a second. I actually have the Wikipedia, because, you know, we take the science seriously. We use Wikipedia.
Of course.
Of course. But
Only the best sources.
only the best sources. Um, but this conversation, of course, is far more broad than simply Area 51, because
Mhm.
Whoa, you can't say broad. That's a wrong
Algorithm.
term to use these days.
Wide.
I don't usually say broad anyway. I say chick, so you know.
Yeah.
I'm sure they like that better anyway. But
My wife likes to use another B word often.
oh goodness, no, I don't.
Okay,
I would never
so
say
broad
such
it
a word.
is.
Anyway, so let me do a quick introduction to Area 51, and then we will get into the conversation. Okay. So first thing here we go. You guys can all see this, and let me share it with the panel as well, so they can see what I'm throwing up on the screen for you, nice fellows and ladies. DeWolf, did you see my my intro? Do you think it was too simple?
I did not see the intro. It was great.
You gotta. Oh, thank you. You gotta check it out though. I really was thinking about doing this crazy. I actually created one that had X-File music and then a record going, "Grrr," you know, and it changed it into a more upbeat music with all kind of imagery I was working on. I was like, God, this sucks, and I just went back.
Oh,
and
right.
I did something ultra simple.
I thought it was perfect. Yeah, it's simple. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yep, exactly.
That's the rule.
I actually teach the KISS rule to the kids here in Japan. They like, why do you call it KISS? I'm like, well, okay. Anyway, so here we go. Area 51. The United States Air Force facility, commonly known as Area 51, is a highly classified remote detachment of Edwards Air Force Base within the Nevada Test and Training Range. Now, DeWolf, you were an Air Force fellow, right? I mean, that's what you were. You were Air
True, yeah.
Yeah. Now, did you ever happen to come across Edwards Air Force Base during your time in the military?
No. I did get to visit White Sands at one point, and honestly, when you see the white, I mean, it's flat. It's very flat and white, and it it stands out. Yeah.
So,
Like Brie Larson's backside.
oh,
Whoa.
okay, all right. Thank you, thank you.
He just takes
The
a shot at her from across the bow.
for no reason at all. Of course, according to the Central Intelligence Agency, the correct name for this facilities are Homey Airport. That's not fun at all. And Groom Lake. Although Area 51 was
Yeah.
used in CIA documents during the Vietnam War. I guess that's where it's coming from. But the facility is also referred to as Dreamland and Paradise Ranch. Interesting. It's got a lot of stuff. And of course, ultimately, as far as what the government will acknowledge with it, it is a place where they test aircraft. And I think that's what
Yes.
it has always been. Experimental aircraft, and you see some here. Now, this is the interesting. It's a whole nother. I think it's part of this conversation is because, if you look at some of these amazing, aircraft that have been tested there and worked on, including, say, like Skunk Works testing of, say, the stealth fighter, which
Oh, right. Yeah.
many of us see as this incredibly modern, aircraft. That's not modern. The thing was created like in the 60s or 70s or something. So for me, the Area 51 conversation specifically talk about the aircraft. I think it has a lot to do with American test planes and things like that. Because if you have a stealth fighter is coming out like this one right here, if this is coming out in like this, they were developed in the 60s and 70s. I mean, geez, it's 30, 40 years later. I mean, come on. I mean, who knows what they've been working over there, right? But anyway, let's get into the actual alien aspect of it, because this is all actually just government's information. Let's come down to the UFO and conspiracy theories. Here we go. It's
Well, I want to
secret.
say something really,
Okay.
really quickly about that.
Mhm.
So we went to an air show at one point, and it was one of the first times that the F-117 was actually brought and put on display. You could come and see it, and of course, there's guards around it. So we get as close as we can, and I guess it's about still 40 to 50 feet away. And my wife says, "Well, it looks like it's cardboard." So I tried to explain, well, that's because it's got special skin. It's radar disruptive type stuff.
Yeah.
She said, no, it's built it here. You think it's here. It's actually built out of cardboard. You don't know. You can't get close enough to check, can you? It's all to deceive you. It's really this is just a cardboard mock-up.
I see. So your wife is the conspiracy theory person, not you. Get her
Right,
on here.
I suppose.
Well, there is an SR-71 up on the deck of the Intrepid in Manhattan Harbor.
Yeah.
And it's incredible. You can go right up to it. You can walk up the ladders and touch the thing. It's decommissioned, of course, but it is amazing. And that was flying in the 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've
made in
been to a
1950s,
movie set
yeah.
and I've touched stuff before too. Anyway.
And when you consider that what they made the SR-71, what it could do, the high tech and the high flying, high speed performance it had in the 1950s compared to what we have now, which is almost like it could be created out of like new things, out of alien technology, which leads us right to where Chester was going.
So here we go. Its secret nature and undoubted connection to classified aircraft research, together with reports of unusual phenomenon, has led Area 51 to become a focus of modern UFO and conspiracy theories. Haha, there's the word. Some of the activities mentioned in such theories at Area 51 include, here we go, the storage, examination, and reverse engineering of crashed alien spacecraft, including material supposedly recovered at Roswell. I'm going to click that in a moment. I will click it. It is definitely not porn. Meeting or joint undertakings with extraterrestrials. Interesting. I think that was Eisenhower theory, right? Development of exotic energy weapons for strategic defense initiative. I hope so. The development of means of weather control, HARP, yep. The development of time travel and teleportation. I don't care about time travel. That's a sticky wicket. I'd like the teleportation, though.
Stargate.
Stargate. Oh, yeah, that would be cool. The development of unusual and exotic propulsion systems related to the Aurora program. Yeah, but is the Aurora program still it's classified?
I'm sure elements of it are.
Yeah, I think it's in the state that Area 51's about. Like everybody knows about it, but there's still a lot of it we don't know about it. That
Now,
type of deal.
some of the things in this list don't really make sense to me because Broom Lake is a aircraft test facility. That's what they do. We know that. It's very clear. It's been documented over time. They even admit it to a point, right? So these other things that have nothing to do with aircraft testing, I would expect they'd be somewhere else, right? I mean, it's. I would think these places are really well focused in the Air Force, aren't they? DeWolf?
Yeah, you would want to spread things out because everything is always compartmentalized. So the left
Yes.
hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing,
Yeah.
and thus and so, right? So yeah, to have all these things at one location, that's ridiculous. You want to
Yeah,
spread
that
all
doesn't
these
make
things
sense.
out, make sure that nobody knows any one particular piece of information, except for one thing, and that would be the aspect of it being a flight test facility and utilizing UFO type equipment or technology, because that right there, alien tech and how to fly, right? That's UFO.
Yeah, that's right, and that for me, that's the point. When Area 51's in the conversation, it has to do: is this just human ingenuity, or is there alien technology involved in the human ingenuity? That's the only conspiracy theory for me. Other people, of course, go way deeper, and that's totally cool. But of course, that brings us to Roswell. So you can't mention Area 51 and not mention Roswell. So let me jump over. Um, I'm sure you know this, but I'm going to read it real quick just so we can have it covered. In the mid 1947s, in mid 1947, a United States Army Air Force balloon crashed at a ranch near Roswell, New Mexico. Following wide initial interest in the crashed flying disc, the U.S. military stated that it was merely a conventional weather balloon. All right, I don't need to go into any further on this because this is obviously fake news. Because that's not at all what the way they kicked off. Now we know, no, it's not. So let me come back over here to the Hangouts and let me drop this for a second. I'll bring it back up later if you guys want me to do some searches. The thing with Roswell was the initial military response that what they had said was a crashed vehicle, right? A flying, they said that. And it wasn't until much later that they actually changed it to it was just a weather balloon. That's where the controversy came from. If it was reported that a military weather air balloon crashed on this farmer's ranch, it would have been nothing. It would have been no one would have any interest. That would have lasted what, 7 decades?
Right.
No. The reason people still talk about it is because the initial report from the military was an alien aircraft crashed, is what they had said, and this is what piqued everybody's interest. And it felt like it was something the military had never dealt with. They were kind of panicking, and then they got their team got up to speed and covered it up. That's Roswell, right?
Well,
Um,
one thing you always want to remember, though, anytime something happens to which the military doesn't know, there has to be some form of cover up, because the military is supposed to know everything,
That's
right?
true.
That means a lack of intelligence. If they have a lack of intelligence, that means the enemy can exploit it. So you're never going to admit that you have a hole the enemy can exploit. And then that leads to the other aspect of, if we don't know what it is, must be back then the Russians, right?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Because you imagine, right? The Russians have their space program. They launched Sputnik. This was all scary to people.
Yeah.
So to have something crash, you don't know if it's the Russians or, once again, now if it's something even more alien. What are we going to do about it?
Well, I get that whole take on the thing, and Patton was right. That's all I want to say. Patton was right. And he was. We could have dealt with the whole situation because, the thing with the whole Russians, just to get that out of the way, because that's a conspiracy theory unto itself, right? In the end, when we had Glasnost and we had the wall fall and the democratizing of the Russian empire into the Federation, what we found out was they were never a threat ever. They weren't
Okay,
even
you're on a
close to
tangent.
it. I know.
I just wanted to provide some background to the military perspective.
Yeah, but see, that's a conspiracy theory too, right? But
Okay.
Patton was right.
He was.
He was. Anyway,
Yep.
so therefore, we have Area 51, we have Roswell, and then that brings us to I think the greater. Well, we'll wait. We'll save on that. Let's stick on Roswell for a minute. Now, what do you think, model, about Roswell? Did there something odd actually crash into this farmer's land, or was it literally just a bunch of young military guys panicking over something they didn't know what a weather balloon was? What do you think?
Well, it was reported from major news publications that it was a UFO, which of
Yeah.
course set everybody off. I tend to think it was probably some kind of a high altitude manned balloon of some type. Just based on I've kind of I've of course everybody's heard countless documentaries and read things about Roswell, and there's so many things that I hear, and like the one guy talks about the thin metal sheet that he picked up, and he could fold it, and when he let go of it, it just sprung back out to its shape.
Hmm.
And I mean, I try to think of like what would someone, and now you think about how our mindset now. Think about just in the 50s, how much more undeveloped people were towards technology, and if someone picked up a sheet of metallized mylar or something,
Right.
they would think it was some kind of a space, and it would fold and it would spring.
Okay.
And then I believe someone actually, there was always a report of like some weird kind of tape that had these symbols on it.
Hmm.
And I believe somebody found that tape, and it was just some kind of a printing on the surface of the tape that was like triangles and things like that. So I don't know. I think a lot of what's going on up in the atmosphere to this day is still very high tech, high altitude balloons.
Yeah, no, they do have that. That is absolutely true.
Yep.
But that's not fun though, model. We want fun. Sundaro,
No,
tell them about
no.
the aliens.
Well, that's the rational accounting of what happened. Let me give you the irrational one.
Yeah.
There have been people, including a professor whose name escapes me, of course, who claims to have metal from that crash that no one can identify. It's whatever it is, it's completely alien. He claims this. He's tested it and everything. It's completely alien to this Earth. It does not have any elements that are found naturally on the planet.
Ooh.
Now, if that is true, that metal would be the most valuable thing in the world. But these are many of the different stories. You also have the stories of, I think it was a farmhand when the crash initially happened. He claims to have seen dead aliens.
Yep.
Yep.
There was an Air Force, I want to say he was a colonel, but he might have been lower than a colonel, who claimed that, yes, they collected bodies from there, and that they did autopsies on them and things. So there's a lot of like weird interchanging stuff, especially with Roswell, which is what really kicked it off in America, the UFO alien stuff. I think most likely he's right, Model's right. And all this was just really advanced technology for the time. Nobody knew what it looked like. And these guys, even these, maybe even that colonel didn't know what it looked like. And they, looking at it from the outside, it looks alien, right? They have no idea. I mean, think about this. The Nazis had flying saucers. They didn't fly very well, but they had them before then, at least almost half a decade before then. And if somebody seeing that from an outside perspective, having no idea that they had created this themselves, would think it was an alien ship.
Wow.
So it also goes to the same thing. Speaking of Area 51, taking back to Area 51, the stealth bomber, what's the designation? The B whatever. The original one that we have, and I think we still use it.
The B1, yeah.
Yeah, they had that for at least a decade before they ever admitted it, and people had been seeing it flying in the sky, thinking it was a UFO for years.
It's
years.
the B2. It's the triangular one. Just
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the
the B2.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of what happened in Roswell was that, but what if it wasn't? And what if it was aliens? And of course the government would come up with a story just like that. They don't have to convince you. They would just have to make you doubt. And that's all they had to do.
Sure.
That's what the weather balloon story does perfectly. It's just not real enough to be real and just not real enough to not be real.
Okay.
So,
and what is the biggest thing? What's the biggest thing that creates that concept of whether it's real or not, or something odd is happening? And that is the cover-up aspect. because after the craft crashed at the ranch, and there was actually 2 crashes, one at Roswell and another one somewhere, I think, slightly north of there. And these people, they saw all this material, and they kind of located. They said something to people. I guess possibly some of the newspapers beat the military. But as soon as the military got there, everything is removed. And not only that, the people were then given warnings, not to speak about what they saw.
That's right. Yeah.
Yep.
And of course, in reality, they're actually aliens from Proximus B. Nevertheless, Asuka Langley Soryu says they don't care that we know about Area 51. All the retrieved extraterrestrial crafts are located in Area S4, Roswell and Phoenix Lights crafts included, a massive underground complex under the desert. Wow, I've never heard that before. That is awesome, though. And
yeah, there is another one.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, no, to be honest, if Area 51 was something before, it's certainly not now. Not with all the attention.
Speaking of that, I remember it was probably about 15 years ago I saw a documentary about it that claimed exactly that since they had to admit Area 51 existed, because they didn't for a long time.
Yeah, they didn't. Yeah.
They moved everything to somewhere, I want to say in like North Dakota or Minnesota, somewhere up north in the northwest, in the northern Midwest. And it was a old silo site for nukes that they had removed the nukes, and that's where they had moved everything to. But I can't remember the designation on it. Let me see if I can find it, actually.
It's probably Minot or up near Fargo.
Could be.
Ooh, interesting. Hold on a second. I got helicopters outside. Is this a problem? Oh, no, sorry.
So if you get a silo, you can fly the flying saucers just straight up and down out of them, without having that runway.
Yeah.
The government has such a documented history of lying about everything, including things that they really don't need to, that it fuels this constantly.
It does. It does. And Kat is telling us she made popcorn for this. I hope we are equal to that task, dear. Nick W. says, another map. Is this D&D? Where's the bugbear? Good point. Reverse engineered alien crafts. And that is the interesting part of the conversation, isn't it? Dave says that possibly I've seen too much. Hangar 18, I know too much. Uh-oh. Extended state of cryogenics. Oh, interesting. Models.
Getting some Megadeth lyrics there, just
on that. On that idea that they don't say, they don't tell us anything, right? And that's a funny concept, because that only happens here in America. We are the people of Freedom of Information Act. We are the people of the government belongs to the people. You work for us. In all other countries, right? you work for them. Shut up. We're the government, and you don't say anything, or you just go missing. So this is why I think there's so many different conspiracy theories here, because we expect information from our government, while other places they just put their heads down and walk past.
Well, right around that time in the 50s and 60s, there's such a Russian technological development that I think it's so with the computer chip and everything, it's very hard to even comprehend how someone just came up with all of that in such a short period of time. So that goes back to the reverse engineering. People think that someone gave us this technology all of a sudden. And then there hasn't been a jump like that since. If you think about the last 20 years, we've gotten better versions of things, variations of things, smaller versions of computers. But what's really changed? The automobile is essentially unchanged. The airplane is essentially unchanged for decades. We're not having that technological advance. We have no energy forms, nothing. But for something happened there in the 50s and 60s where we made a huge jump.
We have. This is fair. Yeah. Now, of course, I'm over here just kind of looking through the image page I did a simple search. Roswell, alien bodies. Ew. Wow. Look at that one. That's definitely ew. All right. Now, we've seen many things on this over the years, of course, getting into the alien aspect. Do you think there's any validity to these photos and these various things we've seen? Is there any validity at all, you think?
It's hard to tell. It's real easy to fake a photo.
It is,
but
these days, yeah.
There is just a plethora of them, and a lot of. It's interesting how many of them look like some of the ancient legends and things of creatures from the stars.
Yeah.
It's just it's very interesting. It's a very well done hoax if it's all a hoax. They've done their homework.
It could just be something that's built on top of itself since '47. It could easily be a hoax. It's true. I think it's interesting. It's fun. It is for sure fun. But for me, the more interesting conversation when it comes to Area 51 and aliens in particular is the UFO, actually. Because this is something
since we're in a segue moment, would that kind of fall under that aspect of if we hide it, not necessarily out in the open, but hide it over on the cheap sheets, I think is what they called it in Will Smith and him called it in Men in Black, right? Where they hide this information, it's real, but we make fun of it and we basically put it out in the open, and then it just sort of disperses and then no one thinks about it again.
It's a fair point. It's a good
speaking of
I think some of it has been allowed. I think a lot of it has been propagated and allowed by the government to cover up other things.
Because they're looking one way while they're doing another thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, right.
Like this one right here, for instance, this type right here, the wedge shape. Now, I think some of those sightings are absolutely the B2, without question.
Yeah,
right.
That's
but the problem is we're talking about in various different locations around the world, not just America. Actually, America doesn't have the highest concentration of sightings. But they have seen these wedge-shaped craft that are enormous. I mean, enormous size. And you're talking about, some cases hundreds, even thousands of people witnessing it simultaneously. Therefore, there's and it's happened so many times that I think that there's definitely is a craft like that. The question now is it something we built, or is it something someone else built, or is it something that someone else built? I think that's the real interesting part, because there's so many eyewitness photographs, witness statements, even video. There's just tens of thousands of them, dude. It's too much that there isn't some craft being seen in the air, and they seem to consistently be three type: this wedge wing type, a long cigar type, and the standard saucer type. That tends to be just those three that people talk about, and it's kind of uniformed in my opinion, which makes it more interesting. What do you guys think about this?
What about the final type that has been? It looks more like a seagoing, like a warship vessel, a flying aircraft carrier. That's been seen. But then it like disappears.
Well, you also have the ones that are all they see is lights. They don't really get a shot of what it looks like. They can just see the lights.
Have you guys ever read anything?
Yeah.
Have you ever read anything about Die Glocke?
No.
The bell, German bell.
No, tell us about that.
Oh yeah.
So, and that's an interesting thing there, that they were obviously testing something very, very strange.
Oh, you talk about the Nazis, yeah.
Well, and there's even a base, there's a structure that was set up to hold this thing, whatever they were doing with it. But I would think, it just in general progression of advancement, I would think that they're working on a new bomber that's improved off that design.
Well, it seems to me that they have a type of propulsion that has not been released in any way to the public. They do have some kind of propulsion. What do you think this propulsion is that is pushing these craft? What do you think it is?
Probably ion drives. We already know that NASA has a mostly working ion drive that they'll admit to. I even seen articles probably I want to say maybe only 5 years ago of them with a full mock-up of what a warp drive would look like. So if anything, it's probably an ion drive, and an ion drive is pretty high tech, obviously. Yeah, but we could use that to propel us in our own solar system quite easily. It goes very fast. So that's probably what it is an ionic drive, because also an advantage of an ion drive, it's not as destructive. Like a rocket is a big explosion coming out the butt of it, whereas an ion drive isn't. It's just an energy wave. So that's probably what it is.
in some of these different aspects of UFOs and on this actual propulsion question, even, I wonder, because you have several different types, maybe the triangle, the cigar, the saucer, and different types of saucers with pointed sections, concave sections. Are the aliens themselves, given the fact that they're there, right? Are the aliens themselves different types of aliens? Is it a scout craft and some of these other ones are motherships, or are the aliens themselves actually able to advance their technology? Are they creating advanced propulsion systems more advanced previously and using those nowadays versus what they were in the 1950s?
Yeah. Now, have you guys seen this photo before? You see the one on the screen? This is supposedly from the space station. And it's interesting. A lot of people are jumping up and down on this being some kind of just ridiculously huge UFO. But to me, it actually looks more like an explosion blast, and that is even more interesting, actually, because what kind of blast went off there? If that's a real photo.
That looks like some sort of plasma or energy explosion. It doesn't look like a typical chemical reaction.
Yeah, and that's enormous, right? That's huge.
Yeah.
Well, I'm skeptical of a lot of this stuff, and there's a reason for it. If you guys have your tinfoil on, I can drop a big one on you.
This is tinfoil talk, dude. Please.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody get down.
Yeah, I think that everything that the fundamentals of what space is, I think we've been completely lied to about.
Oh, yeah,
could be.
Which
really hard for us to confirm it.
Got to expand on that.
Yeah, expand.
It's commonly just taught to everybody that space is a vacuum, and that's impossible.
True.
It's the second law of thermodynamics, which is a law, it's not a theory, states that you cannot have a pressurized system inside of a complete vacuum. And most people don't understand how powerful a total vacuum is. We can't even create a total vacuum on Earth. It's not possible. They can get it down very low, and they actually, they use pumps, but then they have to go to a chemical process, which actually will start to deteriorate any kind of pressure in atmosphere. I just cannot, I can't resolve in my mind any possible way that you could have a pressurized Earth with an atmosphere floating around in a total vacuum. I just don't, and so there may be something else going on that's been kept from people, but I would bet anything in any kind of situation that space is not a vacuum. Now, did you guys see the article that came out a couple weeks ago that was on some major sources that said scientists now think that the moon may be partially in the Earth's atmosphere?
Well, I mean, it probably is in a certain way. If you look at the upper atmosphere, it would make sense to me. I am showing this video, which you probably all seen, but of this giant thing that seems to be sucking energy out of the sun, and then it decides to leave quite abruptly. You guys seen this before?
Yeah.
Very cool. I love this video. It is so
no, I've not
cool.
seen this.
Oh,
it looks like nothing.
No, we're right over here. You see there's this funnel. It's like, oh, there's a vortex. Okay, that's fine, right? It doesn't seem like much now, but what are they doing in this video? Quit messing around. But what you're going to see here momentarily is this roundish object that looks like maybe it's just kind of a wake from the vortex. It's going to leave.
Yes,
dude. It's going.
I'm waiting for the leaving then.
Okay, well, where is it?
Is it?
This video is just going back over. Hold on a second. No, don't do that. Stop it. Where's that video?
So Quasar was not known to necessarily do that, but I think he could.
Well, there's other things that have been captured. Speaking of UFOs in the sky, including the Black Knight satellite, that nobody really knows what it is.
Yeah, that's right. Black Knight.
I don't know if anybody's familiar with the Black Knight, but the Black Knight is basically what looks like a space debris of some description that is in orbit around the planet, and we've caught pictures of it.
Yeah.
Nobody knows where it came from or really what it is, and I'm actually surprised. I guarantee you NASA's been to it. There's no way they haven't gone and checked it out. So it's interesting because that could be a very huge confirmation for a lot of people that there's something going on. Somebody's been here, or maybe it's just a rock that got stuck. Yeah, it's just hard telling.
True. That's true. It could be. It could just be a big piece of rock or asteroid that's got stuck in orbit. Yeah, that's a fair point. But with me for the UFO things, it's I think it's very interesting that the shapes are so uniform because when we look at the UFO, the saucer thing, we know that the saucer really came out of the concept of the saucer really was talked about, I think, the first time in movies actually. It's interesting that they follow that point, which also can make it seem like it's something that just got in people's mind from watching movies and they start creating it, right? When we start seeing some of the more interesting video and pictures, it really feels like to me it's some kind of propulsion that the government is using. And it's interesting you mentioned the ion engine because for me, I think it has more. It's more, electromagnetic actually.
Could be.
Because well, though there's some very interesting things. If you ever read some of the Indian origin stories and their old stories, they talk about Vimana, right? And they talk about the battle of the gods and stuff. And there's a couple of documents that are over there where they explain very, very clearly what a Vimana is. It's almost schematic level of explanation in these stories. And in them, what they're using, it's a saucer shape, by the way, and these are stories from thousands of years ago. It is the main propulsion engine, the main, I don't know if I want to say fuel, but the engine is built using some kind of electromagnetic energy interacting with mercury. Mercury seems to be a big part of it. And if you go to other cultures who talk about the gods and their flying ships, Mercury gets mentioned quite a bit, actually. And I'm kind of wondering if somewhere along the line, some American or maybe German at the time this happened, scientists was saying, we should look into this Mercury thing. And they started doing research and they found something. Because we do know the Germans were all crazy about researching all occult things, trying to find technology. And I'm wondering if you guys want to take a stab at that.
Well, I think that was commonly thought to be a big part of what the Germans were doing with the Bell and with some of the other things where they were spinning Mercury at high rates of speed.
That's right.
And trying to create magnetic fields with it. And a lot of people think that they did it.
Yeah, no, I see. I tend to agree as well. I got to go catch the door real quick. You guys take over, all right?
Well, speaking of Roger over here, Roger Heller, actually a while back, about 15 minutes ago, asked, "Does anyone think that the stories by the Navajo about shapeshifters could have been stories about them seeing aliens?" These stories are ancient. I mean, there's accounts in the Bible. It goes all the way back. People have been talking about men coming from the stars. Some people just called them gods. Some people didn't. Some different groups of people just call them men from the stars, and they talk to them or trade with them or whatever, or be attacked by them. And it's just interesting how much valuable information was always overlooked because people just thought it was myth. Well, then you talk about the mercury thing, and now we know that you actually can use mercury to create strong electromagnetic fields. So it's interesting that maybe there was more to it than we thought. Maybe like he said, maybe the Navajos shapeshifters they were talking about, maybe those were aliens that they saw. You never know.
Yeah, and they've also removed mercury from common accessibility by saying it's dangerous. Just saying.
When I was in about, I think it was 4th grade, it might have been 3rd grade, had a teacher, and he was making a thermometer in one of our science classes, and he was had mercury. He was blowing it into a tube, into a pipe, and he let the seal go. And I'm not kidding, like a pint of mercury shot down and went down his throat.
Ooh. And
he never got sick. When we were kids, we used to play with the stuff all the time in our hands and roll it around and smush it. And I think that's, and then of course, what you just said, now all of a sudden everybody talks about, oh, mercury will just kill you. You better not touch it. It'll kill you. It's in don't eat this fish. It's in that fish, And have you ever heard of anyone getting mercury poisoning or dying from mercury?
Well, of course not, because they make sure no one can get it. Come on.
But back there, not that long ago, mercury was everywhere. It was in thermostats. It was in
every thermometer had it. Every thermostat had it. Even electronic thermostats had it in there. It's so good at converting energy like that and tracking energy that it was really the only thing they could think to even use. Now most of them are digital, but back in the day, you didn't have a choice. You had to use mercury.
Oh, and every middle school and elementary school science department had a bottle of it.
Yep.
It was everywhere, and it wasn't this horrible thing.
Yep. Kat actually asked an interesting question. We were looking at the animals, the creatures, the aliens. Why would a creature from another planet look similar to us? Well, there's a lot of reasons it would look similar to us. I'm hearing some echo. What's going on? Why do I got echo? One of the reasons would be, of course, if you're a deist and believe in God, he created beings similar wherever they're coming from, and that's why they look like us. Another reason could be if you're more of an evolutionist or materialist, maybe life can only exist in so many different forms, and maybe intelligent life can only exist in so many different forms, just because that's just the way it is. The way the laws of the universe are structured, it can only evolve certain ways. And that would be one of the reasons they look like us. We really don't know. We just don't know how many different ways life can exist. We know of carbon-based life, which is what we are and pretty much everything on this planet is, but we don't know what's out there. There could be mercury-based life out there for all we know. There's no way for us to know until we get out there and look.
Well, wow, you guys, I've decided to look up some of the possibilities of mercury, and apparently, if you supercool it, it gets magnetic.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that it requires ferrous metals to be magnetic, despite what Magneto does and is able to affect every metal
Right.
with magnetism. Most magnetism does not include.
Did you want to show something? I'll share your screen if you like.
No,
Okay.
it's just a bunch of text of stuff. But yeah, so aluminum and copper and these things are not actually magnetic. And so it requires iron. Well, mercury can become magnetic. And that's really interesting in the concept of what we're talking about, how it can be used for create sustainable magnetic fields and the like. And then you throw in the fact of, I think you were talking about using electromagnetism to alter something, maybe gravity, because gravity, we know, is its own energy source. It's its own thing that's based upon altering space as we know it. So,
well, speaking on this, like I was talking about with the ion drive, an ion drive basically is an electric drive. I couldn't remember what the full proportion of it is, but I'm looking up here. It says
here's one right here. There you go.
Thrusters and other types of iron engines also use electricity, usually generated by solar panels, to expel plasma. Which would be basically what you'd have. You have to have something to propel it, as far as we know. It's just we haven't come up with a way to defeat the laws of the universe where we don't need a propulsion system yet. But as far as we know, that's the one I was looking at. In fact, you have to have something to create that reaction and drive and cause thrust.
It is interesting that these images for ion thrusters came up. But look at my search. Look at what I searched. I searched mercury as propulsion, and I'm getting ion drives. Why?
Well, but these ion drives are create just as much thrust as a piece of paper falling to the floor, though. That's the problem about this theory.
I see.
Yeah, it takes years for them to get up to speed.
I'm trying
now
to say that Google is whispering to us. I searched mercury as propulsion, and ion drives are here. You missed it.
Have you ever heard of the wheel, the magnetic wheel that is at Coral Castle?
No.
Oh,
Tell us
right,
about
right.
that. Ooh, Coral Castle. I'll just search that right up because that's where. Yeah.
Well, there's a device in there that.
I do apologize it took me so long, but I just got a very large box of assorted meats. Yeah.
Oh.
Yes.
Carnivore Club.
Yeah. No. It was a thank you.
Yeah, there's a device down in the basement at Coral Castle. It's one of something that was left by the owner, and nobody knows what it is, how it works, but it's loaded with magnets, and some people think that he would fill it with mercury.
Ooh. Interesting.
So I think what you would have to look up is Coral Castle device or flywheel or something like that to find.
Ouch.
Now, I
banged my
usually
knee on
don't
my desk.
search.
Sorry.
Oh, there it is. I usually don't search as we're doing this, but today I'm doing a little bit different for fun. I thought it would be cool because who knows where the conversation is going to go, right? Here's this flyer he was
Right.
talking about. Interesting. Perpetual motion engine. Mm.
Well, it's also because if there are, let's say there is interstellar aliens. I don't think if the aliens are real and they're coming here, I don't think they're interstellar. But let's say they are. They would have to have some form of propulsion that is way beyond chemical propulsion. They would have to be some kind of energy-based propulsion that is able to fly through space and deal with whatever's out there, all kinds of cosmic energies. So, and obviously increase their speed or take them out of space and allow them to, like a slipstream type deal or hyperspace, whatever. Something to that effect would have to happen for them to be able to do interstellar travel. Otherwise, it would take them, forever to do it. So we know that we have to be on the cusp of something here with this Mercury stuff or something.
Maybe. No.
Because no, go ahead.
I wanted to play devil's advocate, if I might. That's assuming that what we've been told about space is at all accurate. That's
Correct.
assuming that the space is what they seem to put forward as this ultimate vacuum that has tons of radiation, and the fact that the sun is hot, but yet in space it's ultra cold, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And yet somehow the heat gets to us.
Yeah, and then
when
people started questioning that, they were like, "Oh, well, it's actually interacting with the atmosphere, and the atmosphere is what's making things hot. It's not the actual sun." They do that kind of stuff.
Of course.
And it's also assuming that the stars are as distant as they say. Now we do know, for
Exactly.
instance, with redshift,
because
let me finish my redshifting point. You can
I'm sorry.
add on to it. Because with the redshift, for a long time they were trying to judge distance by using redshift, and now we know that it doesn't work like that at all. So in essence, they haven't mentioned it. They're really kind of mum on the thing, but because we know the redshift is completely wrong, therefore they have no idea how far things are at all. But as usual, scientists say things with such confidence, it's as if it were concrete truth. Go ahead, DeWolf.
Right. So, and then tagging onto that, what Model 316 said. So the moon is in some form or fashion within our atmosphere, they say. Well, imagine that all these particles of something, even just regular particles of matter, have to slowly dissipate further and further out away from our solar system, and then every solar system and every galaxy, meaning that there's particles that space is kind of filled up with something, except those areas that are far away from all these suns and stars and all these planets, where there actually is nothing out there that's burning and doing all this. There actually is going to be closer to nothing, just from laws of dispersion. Closer to nothing. Okay, the speed of light, then, how it refracts differently through air and water. Its speed changes. So if its speed changes based upon it being in a near to total vacuum, now you're talking the fact that light can instantaneously travel a further distance. So those things may not be the quote billions of light years away. What even is a light year at that point? We don't know.
Well, I think we're on the cusp of getting some kind of a major disclosure. I start to see, when I see stories like this about, they're saying, well, now we think the moon was in the Earth's atmosphere. Well, everybody, that didn't get a lot of press, but it was on every major science source a couple of weeks ago. But if that is the case, that puts into question everything that NASA has said that they've done. Because for one thing, if most people don't realize that in a total vacuum, conventional thrust systems do not work. Rockets do not work. Fan propulsion does not work.
But they do all the time. We see it.
But it's been tested. It's been tested, and you can find videos of them testing propulsion systems in a vacuum. As soon as it drops to a certain pressure, they'll do something simple like hang a feather behind some kind of a thrust or a propulsion unit, and as soon as it hits a certain vacuum, the feather just hangs and doesn't move. That's in front of conventional fans, chemical rockets.
Oh, wow, yeah.
They do not work. So and with this story that just came out, and it was interesting when Trump started talking about doing a space force, I think that they're getting ready to maybe make a major announcement that we were wrong about a few things, but it's going to be hard for them to do that because they've based so much on. I mean, there are entire academics, industries, that there's so much riding on this that's pretty much been set in stone. That
Right.
to walk any of this back is going to have huge implications. But there's a lot wrong with what they've been talking about. The sun is supposedly 93 million miles away,
Right.
but a couple of degrees on the tilt will change the temperature that drastically. Come on.
Yeah.
A few
Let's speculate on aliens once again.
Even if it's, well, I mean, this has to do with all that. That when I said that I think that the government has allowed a lot of this to propagate to take people's mind.
Oh, right. So, Chester, I want you to look up something. I want you to look up Hubble Deep Field. Hubble Deep Field. I think that's all you need to look up.
I have the book.
And that's not what I asked you to look up. Oh, wait. I'm on the wrong.
I probably have that book as well.
So Hubble Deep Field. Okay, what this is, if you take one of these pictures, this is going to show you what they did was they took an area of space that what we commonly see as black, with no stars in it. It's somewhere near the Big Dipper. And they said, let's take a time exposure of this area of space and let's see what pops up. Well, over 10 days, they got this picture. Now, this picture, if you go outside and hold a penny up, I believe in the United States, there's a D, right? So this picture is the size of the D. If you hold it up out at arm's length, that's the amount of sky you're looking at here. Mm-hmm. And all of these little dots are galaxies, is what they found out.
Yeah.
So if you take that, multiplying it times all of the extra area of space and sky there is, all this is out there. And so the idea that there may or may not be aliens or other dimensions, universes, on one of these is a Spider-Man, is what I'm saying, or a Superman on the other galaxy.
Oh, I see. Okay. No, it's obviously it would be incredibly arrogant to assume that we're the only living thing in the universe, if the universe is made up of what we are told it is.
The Hubble doesn't take photographs. It doesn't take photographs. It collects data, and then the data is reconstructed into images.
Well, that's a whole nother topic on NASA as a conspiracy theory, because NASA never releases actual photographs. No, they're always computer-generated images every time. That's right. I think there's only one or two ever that they've ever taken that were real pictures, which is very weird. It's very weird. There's literally no reason I can think of to do that other than you're hiding something. There's no other reason.
But they are certainly hiding things. But it's the question of what are they hiding? It isn't necessarily they're hiding. I mean, they could be, but it's probably more than likely it's just they're doing some secret projects and they can't reveal it, so they need to hide stuff and not talk about it. I mean, that would be the easiest answer, right? But
I don't think anyone's ever been in space. I don't think it's possible.
Uh-oh.
Well, no, that's a fair argument, because here is a very interesting point that can be made. Let me bring this up here real quick. Technically, we actually don't have any picture of Earth from space.
Correct.
Now that is an odd thing. Why? I mean, you send all these drones and these satellites out to Mars and Jupiter and Saturn and Pluto, et cetera, but yet you don't have a picture of Earth from space, because all the pictures we have of Earth from space, of course, are stitched together things, and they're very much artistically touched, and many times they're different. The colors are different, the size of continents are different, and it's like they can't keep their consistency over time. And it's like, this is obvious for us to see, guys. We can see this, guys. It's not, what are you doing, right?
Well, the worst part is now they claim that the Earth isn't a circle. They say it's more pear-shaped,
it's a
right?
Pear. Yeah.
Look at those pictures. That's not a pear. That's not a pear at all. That's a ball.
Yeah, no,
that's 100%
it's a perfect
a ball.
sphere. Actually, it's a perfect sphere. So they need to pull Dr. Tyson back on his things. But yeah, no, here's a very good side by side. Let's bring this up. But there's actually, I've seen pictures of multiple of them. They changed how the pictures are, and in this case, this is very similar. But I've seen ones where the continents are bigger, smaller. You can see where obviously they have clicked and dropped clouds at different places. I mean, they obviously have been manipulated. And it's like, well, why don't you just give us a photo of the of Earth, man? What's the problem? Well, I mean, what's the
Well, do you
problem?
remember that photo they released a couple years ago that was supposedly from that Deep Space Explorer satellite where the moon was transiting the Earth?
Oh yeah, right. I saw that. Hold on a second.
But
Yeah, I saw that.
so
Yeah.
you
Right
you
here, right
remember
here.
the size?
This one, yeah.
No, well, let me see.
Yeah,
I gotta
Explorer
get
1.
to
Yeah,
the
this is
hangout.
the one. This is the one, yeah. I remember.
Yeah. Now look at the size of the Earth. Now think about the photo supposedly from Apollo 1 with the astronauts. It's called Earthrise. And the Earth is about the size of the moon. When the astronauts, the photo that they've taken from the surface of the moon.
That's
now
right.
look at the size of the Earth.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
weird.
it
So
does-
if
it doesn't make any
they
sense.
were on there and they took a picture, the Earth would fill the entire camera.
You would think.
Right.
Yeah, but and we know that is an artifact, meaning that picture that they've shown us is actually that was clicked, cut and pasted in a way, in the old way.
It's a
into it.
fraud.
We know it's a fraud, yeah. Yeah, and it's funny because in this one right here, they were showing there was a video. This is just a still image, but in the video you see the moon moving, but no cloud moves at all. It's like incompetence on an incredible level. I mean, you just go hire a movie Hollywood director, man. They'll do it good for you, right? I mean, because clouds move.
Yeah. Oh, now Dave has an interesting thing he says over here. He says the aliens are really us from the distant future.
Maybe.
Now,
That's
that's a whole other ball of wax, but that could be true because what I actually think aliens are, I think they're real, 100%. I think it's arrogant of us to think that there's not other things out there. I don't think space is what we think it is, like he's saying. I think space is quite literally a space between realities. And we can see it because we're in a reality and we can see outside of our reality, which is Earth. The ancients used to call Earth a realm or basically a dimension.
Yeah.
That would make more sense for how they can get here because if it's supposedly millions and millions and trillions and billions and Googleplex miles apart, there's no way to get here. But if it's not that, and these are actually just empty spaces, not even vacuums, there's just the space in between, the thing that keeps the realms apart, they would have to have inter-realm travel. They'd have to have interdimensional travel.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's very possible that is what they actually are. They're beings from planets similar to ours that are in what we call galaxies, but really all that is just a whole nother basically existence, and they can come here with their technology.
Yeah, no, that's an
I
interesting
think
concept.
we could very well be aliens ourselves. I mean, I think we could have
Could
been.
be.
Well,
I don't think we evolved. I think everybody, the different races, I think everyone was made that way.
Well, it is
So-
interesting you say that because there are ancient stories from different places around the world, and this is more talking about archaeological finds and things like that, right? Ancient art, texts and stuff. And in those stories, they tell us various cultures say different things. Some cultures talk about people coming from other planets. You got to understand this idea of heaven being an actual separate dimensional space is a relatively new one. For most of our history, the heaven is space. And they were talking
Right.
about them coming from another planet, another place. And anybody who wants to sit here and say that the ancients thought the earth was flat, they're out of their mind. There was a very short period, mainly under the Christian period, which not to knock on the Christians, but the Catholic Church did a lot of things to knock down knowledge and technology, guys. They held us back for 1,200 years, the Catholics. All right.
The ancient Persians before the Islamization of
They all
Persia knew the Earth was
Greeks
round.
knew,
They had
Egyptians knew.
they had the mathematics for it already way back then.
And they knew it was a planet. They actually knew its dimensions incredibly accurately, by the way, which is in itself interesting conversation. They say they come from other planets. We also have some that talk about humans being brought from other planets. We have some of the Asian stories talk about that. We also have the Celtic stories with Nuada and his journey.
Hmm.
They're basically saying that they came from Nurgle, which is Mars. That's what they say in the
Well,
story.
you
They
also
traveled here
have
from Mars because
Now
Mars
you
was
made that up.
destroyed in a cataclysm. I didn't make it up.
you
That's
have
their story.
The Norse version of reality, which is the realms, which is what I was kind of
Yeah.
talking about.
Mhm.
They're different planes of existence, but they're actually still part of the same existence, an omniverse or whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
And obviously, the gods are from Asgard, and then we're Midgard, and there's all the other planes. But it's a similar idea, and
Hmm.
this is a theme that's all throughout
It is
pretty much the world.
in
All the
history.
cultures of the world had a
Yeah.
similar.
That's
Yeah.
right. Now, I before we continue on that, I just want to make one little point here. If we look at this picture, this is a picture showing all the satellites around Earth, right? And
Hmm.
here's another one, here's another one, and here's another one. All these just incredible amounts of satellites, right? Now, the interesting thing to me is we have this level of satellites and debris and crap that's going around the planet all the time. Where is it in these pictures? These are
Yeah.
photographs,
Why
right?
can we never see it?
These are
Right.
photographs. They're stitched together. They admit that they're stitched together from thousands of pictures. But why in that
Hmm.
stitching do we not see a single satellite when obviously there's supposed to be this level of satellites are flying around? I mean, come on, what? What?
Right.
Why? What's going on? I mean, once again, go hire a Hollywood director to do your. I won't swear.
Well, and likewise with the that there's no actual pictures of Earth, there are also no real pictures of any satellites.
Right.
Everything is computer generated. It's all
Okay, then I have to step
Hooey.
in.
Okay,
But
all
you
hooey.
can
stepping in, guys.
see, you can see little white dots that are satellites, and you can look them up. You can look at the satellite tracks. What NASA says, what they say is the satellite track across the sky. You can find that. You can find the ISS.
Yep.
You can see it
I've seen the
traveling,
mirror too.
across at night.
I've
Yeah,
seen
I've
the
seen
mirror.
them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
Didn't saucers
Well,
So you're
come
saying
from
Cat is
Wells' War of the Worlds?
put those two
Probably.
things together and explain that to me.
Well, is that what you're seeing? Or are they balloons?
I don't know.
Balloons, because you would have either a satellite that is orbiting or you have geosynchronous, right?
Right.
So every time that I've seen, I used to, because I lived up in northern Minnesota, there's no light pollution. The sky that I would see up there is nothing like I've ever seen anywhere else I've lived. And I would watch them. All you had to do is watch long enough and you'd see a little speck. And they're cruising. They're hauling ass across the sky.
Yeah.
And it could just as easily be one of those huge silver balloons. I don't know if you've ever seen the video footage of them launching those huge balloons from Antarctica. They've got the special cranes and trucks that they launch these things off of.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Who knows how many thousands of those things are up in the atmosphere?
True. Now,
Most
Right.
most
Well,
people
and
don't.
if you're also not putting satellites up in space, I'm not saying, I don't know if you guys are or are not saying that they're putting satellites in space and that they are actually orbiting. They're spending
No,
a
I
lot
don't
of
think-
money
I don't
on
think so.
little cylinders and cubes with solar panels on them for them
Yeah.
to be going
well,
someplace.
if the moon is within our atmosphere, then technically they're not in space. And of course, the space station isn't in space either. We know that's in orbit. That's actually in high-end atmospheric orbit. And they admit that. That's not a hidden thing. So satellites actually would be moving through atmosphere, actually, not space. But
And the interesting thing is what is keeping it up there? Is it
Well,
is it just
propulsion.
balloons?
It's in
propulsion.
space. I mean, okay, we say space. When we mean space, we mean outside of several miles. I think of only about 10 miles up, right? That's what we say
Yeah,
when
but
we
it's
mean
not
space. But
within
we
the
know the
pure.
atmosphere
It's
goes
not within
further.
pure vacuum, though, is what I'm trying to say.
It's not within pure
Yeah.
vacuum, right? But and all you need then is orbital velocity, which in some cases is 17,000 miles an hour.
Right. Which you would think would be too fast for our eyes to catch. But seeing as we're supposed to be moving at incredible speeds as well, yeah, maybe that's what it is. It's all about speed movement. But let me catch the chat. There's a couple of interesting things over here I want to cover. Dave says Anunnaki means those who from heaven, who the heavens came to earth. Anu meaning space, Ki meaning earth, and Na means movement, right? In that way. It also can be translated, though, as An Nunaki, and that would have a different meaning. That would mean the children of On, right?
Right.
So it could be one or the other, but the Anunnaki are fascinating, of course. Kat says, if we came from another planet, then why is our DNA similar to every other creature on the Earth? Well, now, Kat, you just hit on something very interesting. It's actually not. Our DNA is quite radically odd.
It is.
Humans
In
in
fact,
particular.
it's so odd that the new theories are that we were genetically engineered. There's
Yeah.
many geneticists who are coming around to this, that something screwed with our DNA, that there was at one point a different type of DNA on the planet that many animals still have. Ours is different. Now, we don't know if it was a natural cause of evolution. We don't know if it was some alien creature, but it's definitely different. Now, how could it be that we have similar DNA even from the same reason? What if life can only exist in certain forms? If, like, because while you were gone, Chester, we were talking about this a little bit. The universe has laws. It has rules. We know that. So if evolution is true, then those rules would apply there too. There would be limits to evolution. So maybe that's the only way for life to exist, is through some sort of DNA structure or something similar, some sort of genetic coding like that. There's no way to know until we find
one of
life
the
that doesn't
holy
do it.
grails of study right now is artificial intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And artificial intelligence, every time you see any developments in it, it's always leading them towards making something that looks like us, or something that can think like us, or they're trying to get human emotion or that kind of decision making. It could quite simply be that someone already came up with the perfect AI and we're it. We could be someone else's AI.
Could be.
The problem with saying that there are certain rules to the universe and then including evolution is that evolution does not fit with any rules of the universe.
No, and I agree with you completely that there are rules, and I think that it doesn't even, those rules don't necessarily have to contradict anybody's religion or anything. No. Because if you have something that is intelligent enough or capable enough to create species of living creatures, who knows? You could call them God. They would be to you, as far as you know.
Yeah. I do have something up on the screen, though, for everybody, to give you an example of what I'm talking about with the DNA, or we're talking about the DNA. As you can see here, human DNA is radically different than supposedly our nearest cousins, if you are a Darwinist. But yet it's radically different. And what they've found is that we were actually missing two less. We're minus 2 chromosomes compared to a chimpanzee, for instance, supposedly our nearest cousin. And that's weird. You would think we're more evolved than them. We would have equal or more. Why do we have less? Well, they found where it is, and it's actually been stitched on top of the first two. So we have the total number that a chimpanzee would have, but our first two are double stacked, and they've been stitched together. This is very, very interesting, and the geneticists can't explain it. Therefore, they rarely talk about it. All right, this shows you right here very clearly that we're not the same. We're very different.
Which is interesting also because it makes the case for people who say that something happened somewhere along back in the past. Either some intelligent force came or just some freak accident happened and did that to our DNA. Our genetic structure either mutated completely to do that, or somebody mutated it for us.
Well, dude, all of our ancient stories say the same thing. Every culture has the same damn origin story. God did it. Now, some of the stories talks about a race of people. Some of them talk about a singular monolithic God. But it's all talking about the clay, essence, blood, changing of blood, stacking on top of, taking a primitive monkey man and adjusting its essence to become more useful and intelligent. Because all the ancient stories, including the Christian ones, humans were created as servants / slave. Right? That's what they say. Every single solitary one of them. So what's the problem? The ancients knew this. What are we arguing about?
Well, human genetic code is probably not that much different than computer code. So if you have a huge piece of computer code, you always hear these things. Oh, we 99% similarity. Well, you could have a huge portion of code, and what happens if you change one minor thing in the routine? It either doesn't work or it does something completely different. So it doesn't matter if it shares all of that same data. There could be a data set that's required just for the basics.
Well, even talking about when you talk about the ancients, all of them, even not even that ancient, when you go like the ancient Greeks, they believed that each plane of existence is how they would have probably phrased it in our language. You know, you had the earth, you had the sky, and then the cosmos, and obviously the sea and the underworld too. But these are the two I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. They literally thought the sky was a whole other world, basically, that Zeus ruled from, that Zeus ruled. So it's interesting. Somebody just dropped out. It's interesting how they viewed the world, and then obviously the ancient stories, going back to the DNA thing, they even had a very similar creation story. You know, it was the gods meddling with things that were already there and created mankind. I think it was Zeus, in fact, in the Greek stories.
Yeah, no, they're all the same stories. They're just retold over and over in different languages. It's the same story.
Right. It's like the American Indians. You know, the people of the wolf came from the fact that the animals were already there, and then the wolf had to be bled, and his blood, turned into, and that's a continual concept throughout many of the natives aspects, is that animals were here first, and then the humans came thereafter.
That's right.
And technically, for something to be an alien, it doesn't have to be from outer space. It just has to not be from Earth. That's all that means. It's just not natural to Earth.
Well, we're not from Earth.
So, right, that's what I was going to say. So technically, by every story we've ever been told, every mythology, every legend, every religion, we're not from Earth. We might be partially created from the Earth, but our main thrust of what gave us life did not come from the planet.
Well,
our bodies are from Earth, but our souls come from someplace else.
Okay. Now, the picture I have here on screen is the Anunnaki version of the creation story, right? And it's talk about them mixing the essence and creating, and this is and there's a whole script to this as well. It's not just this image, and it's talking about the creation of man. And now, the Anunnaki are very popular amongst conspiracy theorists, or just people who enjoy this kind of conversation. And of course, the reason is because Zecharia Sitchin made all those really good, fun books that he did. And of course, keep in mind, for the most part, those are all just his translation of Sumerian stories, right? It's not like he's, this is his opinion or his fantasy stories. He just translated them. Now, he did do Lord Enki, a book called Lord Enki, which was a fanciful look at his just assumption of a conversation with Enki, right? So that's complete fantasy. He just did that for fun. But all his other books are simply translations, and he tried to put them in a modern parlance, but he says many times in his book, this is simply your information. You choose. You make a decision what you think of it, right? He's not telling you what is what. But the point I'm trying to make is the Anunnaki is well known. Everyone talks about and knows about the Anunnaki, but a lot of people don't know about the other cultural stuff because they haven't been put forward as much. But you have to understand, whether it's India or Thailand or Japan or China or the Americas, as DeWolf had just mentioned, and then of course all the standard ones, which Egypt and Greece and the Nordic and stuff, which are all exactly the same stories, by the way. They're all saying the same thing. They all do. You just don't know it as much because it's not as prevalent as the Anunnaki, right? But they're telling you the same stories, So it is very interesting that how we choose to pick what out of. They'll do this out of the same story, by the way. They'll look at one story and say, "Oh, this is fact. This is historical information. Oh, the rest of it's fantasy." Well, how are you doing that in the same damn document? But they do.
How are you delineating that right there in the same thing you're reading? In fact, going off that topic, Kat says maybe all the stories being similar is just the extent of our human creativity on how humans came to be. Now, she's being a little tongue-in-cheek there, but she could be right. Maybe our brains were just not able to conceptualize anything beyond these stories, and we just keep creating it in different cultures over and over again. Very possible. We know that there's a limit to intelligence, obviously, and there's a limit to what we can create with our minds. We've actually been able to get AI to go farther than what most people can conceptualize already, which is terrifying.
They're smarter than we are now. Oh, yeah, they are.
Yeah. So she could be right. That could be all it is. It could be that simple. But that's not fun. We want to have fun.
That's true. Yeah. But it's a fair point. Google's super computer. I'm a horrible typist, by the way. But
do they have that at Area 51?
I said they should. But now these right here, this one right here. Okay, the quantum computers. These are things you've actually had real, actual, serious scientists come up and
Hmm.
warn about these things.
Elon
Literally,
Musk.
they're
Sure.
terrified of them, and it's weird to see a serious scientist who usually doesn't come and speak publicly to get up and actually speak and is scared of these
Yep.
things, because these things are the quantum computers. They are improving their understanding of reality at a factor of like days now, right? These things they won't tell us exactly what level of intelligence these things have. They've stopped talking about it about 5, 6 years ago. But the thing
Hmm.
is, if you go from that just the standard track that they were talking about, these things might well be 1 to 10 million times smarter than a human right now,
Yep.
right?
Um, the interesting thing is, you talk about scientists, even guys like Elon Musk, when he was on the Joe Rogan podcast,
Hmm.
terrified Joe because of how serious he got talking about how dangerous AI is,
Yeah.
and that he warned people, and nobody listened. Nobody would listen to him.
Well, wait a second.
Stephen Hawking had warned
How's it going,
people. I even
guys?
think there's some. Hey, man.
Hey, Beowulf, dude.
Hey,
I even think there's some stuff out there about Bill Gates saying things that AI is dangerous. It is literally the next nuclear race is AI.
but let's define what smart is, and smarter than a human is, right?
Yeah, I was going to ask that same question.
Cognitive
I'll let you make-
ability. Cognitive
In
ability.
every single way. Literally in every single way. They can reason better, they can deduce better, they can create art faster and better. These things are terrifying how
Yeah.
smart they are.
Well, because
And they're
But
constantly learning.
they do not have any, and they do not comprehend though things like morality or anything
No,
like
of
that.
course
That's the
not.
thing that and they can't artificially do that, and that's probably going to that's a limit with conventional computing using metal and electricity. The next evolution is almost definitely organic computing, and
I
when
would
that
think so.
happens, then things are going to get worse when they
Well,
can
see-
use like some kind of gelatin as the processor.
Ah, sure.
It'll have to go to organic.
Yeah, but see, they're not
They probably-
using them for that purpose, though. Of course, a human is superior in our ability to have moral judgment and stuff like that, obviously. But they're not using these computers for that. This isn't
Mhm.
about creating a walking, talking AI. It's not the point. This is about calculation of scientific principles, mathematical ideas,
Mhm.
and control
Financial.
of financial control of internet. That's what the purpose of these things are. And of course, this ties directly into the Mandela effect. Obviously, and
Mhm.
it's interesting when as we talk about these different conspiracy theories over the next so many weeks, or well, who knows how long this series will go. But as we talk about it, I think we're gonna be shocked as we realize how many of these conspiracy theories are actually connected to the whole. And that
Mhm.
is maybe the scary thing, the actual scary thing, because whether these conspiracy theories are true or not, because I'd say none of them are actually true, but they all have a kernel of truth. And the fact that all of those
Mhm.
kernels line up in a row that are completely connected, it's an interesting conversation unto itself, right? And
Yeah.
these supercomputers are absolutely part of everything that's going on. I have no doubt, you know.
Well, and
It's,
the people that are working on these projects, they cannot resist. They have the ability to make use of it and use that power. They can't resist doing it. You know, if those things are ever able to break loose and get into our infrastructure and like electrical systems and stuff like that, we'll have some major problems.
And they
So,
probably already
so
are.
are you guys saying that artificial intelligence exists already?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, to a point.
They-
yeah.
Even though
a
all
version of-
scientists say it doesn't.
With that, it doesn't have emotion. It doesn't have anything like that. It's purely computing.
It's purely intelligence.
Because everything
It's
I've
not-
read says that we're decades away from artificial intelligence.
No. Even like I said, even Elon Musk was talking about it. It's absolutely, it exists.
Yeah, but
It's
he was
capable of
talking
learning.
about something that exists in the future that we
No,
haven't
he wasn't.
reached yet. Yes, he was. I watched the
not
whole
what he-
Joe Rogan thing because
did I.
what he wants us to do is work towards having integration. Because when it comes out, he's saying when it comes, and it will come, it will be
No,
so
he
far
did.
beyond us.
Beowulf's absolutely correct.
It'll be so far beyond us that we'll be like monkeys to it.
So there's a new
But
technology.
it doesn't exist yet.
there's a new technology in computing that happened within the past 2 months, and I think it's very relevant at this point because it was a type of storage RAM, okay, right, storage media on a computer, in which in the RAM section, in the storage section, the computer could actually do calculations. Okay, calculations are what are normally done within your CPU, right, in your brain and your computer, and then it goes and stores things, and then of course later on it comes back, it gets more information, it computes it, and it sends it back to storage. What this means is it can actually take the storage media, say I want this calculation done, and send it over there, and then it addresses it itself, right? Creates a whole new address, puts it over in there. It performs the calculation while it's doing other calculations, then comes back, gets that information, and then of course it can do this. We now see, storage devices are now in the 2 and terabyte drives that you can buy, right? So out in the regular world, they can become, out in the engineering world, they're a lot larger. So if you have all this large storage media that is now also computing media, it means the entirety of the computer is actually now doing computing. And they're saying that this will actually open up a window for actually more complex AI.
Yeah. No, I think we should make a fair distinction, as Beowulf has said, between AI and supercomputing, quantum computing.
Yes.
We should separate that out. Yeah. No, because we're not
Well-
talking about the walking around, thinking, talking, making decisions type of AI. We're talking about this,
Right.
these supercomputing. As you see here,
And my
we're talking
point-
about the D-Wave. This is an advertisement for, or at least a program on it. And of course, the number I was looking for was 100 million times faster. I do apologize.
Oh yeah, and my point to all that was to say that that just came out 2 months ago. So they're still talking about technologies that are going to make AI better and more possible, which means A, they're creating it, and B, we're not quite there yet. So we're on that razor's edge.
Though I have a problem with a lot of the stuff that comes out. First of all, scientism is a major project that is slowing down humanity. And like people like Elon Musk, I see Elon Musk and I think about, well, you were just a few months ago, you were part of a huge fraud telling people that you put a car into space, which I can look at that video and I can tell you that was not a car in space. It was CGI.
Dude,
So
have you seen the video of the Chinese in space? That one's awesome. Boy, their blue screen really needs improvement.
All right,
Yeah,
I have a question.
That.
How do we? This is something that bugs me, right? This is a legitimate question for people who know this stuff, because I don't. How do we differentiate between what's real and what's CGI?
Ooh.
Like someone like me who doesn't know anything about like how to create CGI stuff, how am I supposed to differentiate?
It's going to get harder and harder to. Almost every commercial you see has CGI in it, and it's so good you don't even realize it.
Yeah.
Like all the car commercials you see, it's all CGI.
Let me scare you just a little bit more with this idea of AI, because think of all the games that you play now, right? You play a game such as here's World of Warcraft, but there's also Call of Duty, right? Rainbow Six, all these shooter games. At some point, usually if there's a campaign and not just multiplayer, there's a script written in there that says this particular avatar, this particular coding that is within the computer represents the character of the player. And you take what you can, and you have to interact within the regular, the matrix, if you will, but at the programming of the three-dimensional environment. And I want you to use these things. These things are guns, and they can project something out there, and they can hit that player character, right? And they can kill them. If you've played Halo, you've watched where the elites will jump left and right behind rocks. So now there's the idea of if there's a threat, then save yourself. These are all AIs that basically say kill the human. Okay? In every computer, in all these shooting computer games, there's AI already created that says kill the human.
Well, and the reason we have shooter games the way we do is because of the military. The military was very involved in.
Yeah, and we're making them even more complex, even more dynamic. You take that code and throw it into just any other AI with a treaded shotgun platform, and it's terror.
Well, look at this side by side I have on the screen right now. This is very interesting to that point, Beowulf. Here on the left, we have you know can't even remember his real name, Tony Stark, and the other side we have a CG touched up version of it. And if we look at it, where's the difference? Why did CG involved? What's the point? Where is the differences? Well, I think his chin looks more manly. His ears seem to be slightly adjusted, but it's hard to tell, right? And this is you wouldn't even know you were looking at CG, even though there it is right in front of you. So it is a fair point. Although this is all, you might be asking, what does this have to do with UFOs? Well, we started out on Roswell, right, and Area 51. And if Roswell has any truth to it, or any of the other reports of crashed alien spacecraft, which there are many, not just Roswell, and they did pull technology, as Model made a good point earlier, that we since the 40s have had just ridiculous technological jumps. What
Mhm.
if there is truth to that, and a lot of the technology we are using today is coming out of the reverse engineering of those craft, and therefore all the technology we have, in essence, today is alien. The connection, therefore.
Well,
Yeah.
it's very possible all of it going back into, they won't even let people know what's written inside the pyramids or
There's
into the
nothing
Hall of
written in the
Records.
pyramids, though. That's
Well,
the conspiracy. There actually is nothing written in there.
I know I'm not completely sold on that. I mean, unless another culture came in afterwards and worked on the cartouches, there are places over there that do have a language of some sort, a pictographic language.
Actually, this is something I can verify from my eyes and things I've seen. There is no pyramid on the planet that has anything written inside it at all. There's nothing written inside pyramids, dude. There's no writing.
Yeah,
There's
and
no art. There's no
I
nothing.
can, I'm with that.
Yeah. I
But
know I
there
know they
are,
say it is. I know they lie and they say, look, I get that. But that is the conspiracy. The fact that something is supposedly written or in certain pyramids. No. There's nothing written inside them, dude. There's nothing in there. There's never been a body found inside of any pyramid. That's all. Now that's another topic. That's another TFT conversation, but and we will get to that because that's one I actually know a lot about. With
sure.
my expertise, this one not as much, although I love the conversation. But yeah, pyramids are fascinating.
There are tombs though.
Hmm?
There are tombs though separate to the pyramids that have.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
all
they
the
have
all
tombs.
the
They have
mummies
those,
were
yeah.
in the Valley of the Kings. That was
Yeah,
all
yeah.
a different place.
Well, it's not just
Yeah.
there. A lot of people focus their conversations on Egypt when it comes to pyramids because, Giza's amazing. But there are pyramids all over this planet, dude. And you can find nearby or sometimes far away for the culture who built them, you can find the tombs elsewhere. Now, to be fair, though, there was a single pyramid that had a tomb found in it. There's no body per se, but there was a tomb-like structure in the bottom of it. But we also know that it was built in. So you had this later ruler who thought the pyramid was cool, and he dug a pit underneath one and went and put his own room and put some interesting things in there. But that was after the fact, right? So even that doesn't help to validify that in any conversation in any way. But like I said, that's a separate conversation. Let's save that. Let's save that. So what would you guys like me to search for the next tangent?
What about
Wow. Well,
how about Bob Lazar?
Okay.
Anybody familiar with Bob Lazar?
Yep.
I was
I
going
don't
to
know
say
if
what's
I gotta spell
under
his name
Area
right.
51, but okay.
I like
Or under
I
the-
like old
under-
Bob actually.
Under the Denver airport, because that's where all the flights come from that fly into Groom Lake.
Oh,
The
really?
daily flights for all the personnel, the planes, the white planes with no windows,
Oh, I
which
see.
that
All right.
that is something that's been confirmed. I
Well-
mean, there are buses and planes that bring people in and out of that every day for their commute. People don't get to drive in there.
Well, let's see what Mr. Lazar has to say on Wikipedia, the amazing source of information that is Wikipedia. Robert Lazar is an American self-described scientist. Self-described scientist. Wow. Can I self-describe myself as a scientist too? I think I will. Who claimed to have worked on
I mean,
reverse engineering extraterrestrial technology at a site called S4. Ooh, there it is again, near Area 51 Groom Lake operation location. Lazar said that the UFOs use gravity wave propulsion. Okay, that's different than what we were talking about, and are or is it? And are powered by the element 115. He said to have read U.S. Government briefing documents that describe alien involvement in human affairs over the past 10,000 years. Lazar's claims resulted in bringing the secret Area 51 site to the attention of the public. Well, it already was. But now here's the thing: why we love Wikipedia because Wikipedia is absolute propaganda. Understand that, and that's not a
yes,
conspiracy theory. That is
100%.
just what it is. Okay, because here we
Hmm.
are. Robert Scott Lazar is an American self-described scientist. What do you mean? Self-described scientist. He is
Every
either a
Wow.
scientist is
scientist or he is
self-described scientist.
not.
Scientist isn't actually a title you get from some king. You do science. Hey, you're a scientist. That's literally all it is.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
yeah, usually people have degrees and things of this nature, but you're either a scientist or you're not, and the only way to be one is to actually do science. That's it. That's the only requirement required. Some of the greatest
Yeah,
scientists
you
of all
don't have
times,
to have a degree.
yeah, had no
no,
degree,
but
never
the
went to any
dude went to
secondary school.
MIT.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
That's
You
why
know,
it's so
I mean,
ridiculous.
I mean, come on. I mean, the dude went to MIT. It's kind of an exclusive elite place. You know, they usually produce science. Oh, excuse me, they always produce scientists. So what are you talking about? American self-described scientist. Goodness gracious.
Oh, by the way,
We
there's
live
a
in a
new
day and age where the
conspiracy.
word scientist is almost religious to people.
Oh
Oh,
yeah,
You put
dude,
the
it
word
is religion.
scientist on something, and
it
all of a
is
sudden,
related.
everything
Yeah,
they say is
Yes.
It is religion.
scientism
it's the new
is a religion.
priesthood. It
You have
definitely.
to tithe to them.
No, it's
It is. It's very well known if you don't toe the line and you don't stay within the books that you will not be a part of any funded research. You will just be removed from academia. You will not be able to teach. I mean, you have to toe the line. There is a
yeah, man.
hard line too.
I'm a
oh,
creationist.
and I gave you
I've
guys.
heard the stories.
I'm go ahead, Beowulf.
I was just saying, I'm a creationist. I've heard the stories of anyone who even questions evolution is just blacklisted for life, basically.
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
and I can give an interesting an account of that personally, and it's not so big a deal. It's a very small thing, but even though I was telling the guys earlier, I went to university and I went to Brown University, which is a prestigious place, right? And I studied anthropology. Well, history, and eventually into anthropology. And I was interested in some various things that weren't, canon, as it were, right? And I expressed those interests and wanted to talk about those things. And I was told very clearly that if you want to get a job or you want to work or be involved, we don't talk about that. I was told very clearly as a student, right, to back up. And of course I did, and I ended up not following that career really. I went into linguistics actually, but but that's not the point. Even in university, as a student, we weren't allowed to talk about those things, right? So
Mhm.
I mean, there you go. I mean, just imagine what it's like at the higher end, right? Because I was
Well,
just literally a student, right?
well,
It's
speaking
interesting
of
to read this. It's
speaking of
interesting to read
you on
this
the
passage
inside
on.
there. Hang on one second. Speaking of you on the inside there, Chester, Kat thinks that you're in on hiding what's written in the pyramids. She's made this pretty clear. You're covering it up. We have created our own conspiracies
There you go.
already.
And it could be true, Cat. You really don't know who I am, do you?
All right, go ahead, Model.
I was just going to say it's interesting to see the way this reads on Wikipedia about Bob Lazar. But if you went and read about Bill Nye or Neil deGrasse Tyson on Wikipedia, it would be glowing. And I think that's really telling as to what.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I can
both of
do
those
that,
guys are frauds.
I can do that.
You know,
There we go. Okay. Let's see if I can spell it correctly because I'm a horrible typist. Let me do it slowly. Neil deGrasse deGrasse
DeGrasse hole.
Tyson. See, when I go slow, I can spell. Oh, there you go. Oh, damn it. He did. There we go. Okay. All right, let's see. Neil deGrasse Tyson, is an American astrophysicist, author, and science communicator. Since 1996, he has been the Frederick P. Rose Director of the Hayden Planetarium at the Rose Center for Earth and Space. Wow, he works at a planetarium. Wonderful. Tyson studied at Harvard University, the University of Texas at Austin, and Columbia. Ooh. And of course, it's just going to go on and just preach this guy's amazing awesomeness.
Yeah, the
Go
guy's
up
never
to
been a
the,
part of any major research or any
Nope.
major project. He just shows up, and really, he's just shown up in the,
Yep.
you know,
go
But
to the
Carl
contents
Sagan
there.
liked him. Just write that down. Carl Sagan.
The
liked him.
scientific sunbeam.
Go to the contents section there. Does it talk about any of his controversies at all in there? Does it have even
Sexual
listed?
misconduct.
Well, I wasn't talking about
No.
that. I was talking about plagiarism. He's been caught plagiarizing
Yeah,
things.
no, I'm
repeatedly.
interested in the sexual misconduct. 4 separate accusations. Me too, indeed, Mr. Tyson. Okay,
accusations, though.
There's actually I saw an interesting thing about Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Uh-huh.
So I missed the start of the show, so I don't know what you guys believe on if we've been to the moon or not. But according to the official story, how many times have we been to the moon?
1, 2,
Oh.
3, 4, 5, 6,
7 times?
7 times.
Yeah, I think
7
7
times.
7 sounds
7
right.
times. The Chinese have been at least once, maybe twice, possibly.
Okay, so I heard the officials 9, but there's a video of Neil deGrasse Tyson where he says we've only been once.
The official is 0, but
That's not the official. You mean your suspected is 0.
So if he's an astrophysicist and a science communicator, and this is a legitimate question. Why is there a video where he says that we've only been once, and if he knew we were never going again, he would have wanted to be involved?
well, I've noticed a very distinct lack of Neil deGrasse lately, publicly, and I'm wondering if he didn't step in a few.
Well, he got me too'd hard.
Well, he got, and maybe that's why they just wanted to shut him up for a while, because he let a few things go about. He let that go on not knowing what gravity was, about the Earth being an oblate spheroid.
Mhm.
You know, he let a few things go where it's like maybe he's getting off the script and he's taking a few too many liberties.
Uh-huh.
Because he's definitely he's a paid spokesman.
Oh,
Is
he
what
is.
he is.
By the way, Wikipedia says it's only 6 times. So there you go.
Well, 13 never
Yeah.
landed.
Yeah, many of
Yeah.
them didn't land. They're surveyors and things like that. I'm talking about the ones that actually landed. They say Wikipedia says 6. Mm-hmm.
Because
That is
13
true.
did orbit the moon. It did go around,
It did.
Yes, it did.
but it never landed.
Why haven't we returned to the moon? Because there are aliens there. That's why.
Because there's no
And
reason
Nazis
why.
too.
Well, and that's like that Hoagland, that
No
Richard
Nazis.
Hoagland guy. You know, the silver-haired Richard Hoagland guy who's always
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about these structures on the alien structures on the moon. All of that is just nonsense.
It's
Well, you first
fun,
have to
though.
ask why we went in the first place, and if we found anything,
To
and
beat the
what
Russians.
we can learn from it versus
That's
what we
not
can
Richard
gain
Hoagland.
from it.
I'm
To
sorry.
extract hundreds and hundreds and trillions of dollars from the taxpayer is why we went.
Well, here's the interesting thing. If you can look this up, Chester, actually, there's an asteroid that they've discovered in space that's made of basically solid gold. It's in our asteroid belt. And NASA is planning on going there in 2022 or 2023, sending a probe there to check it out. And then, yeah, there it is, a 700 quintillion asteroid. There's already companies forming in Europe right now for asteroid mining, which is interesting. Because obviously that's a long way off before we'd ever be able to do anything like that.
I don't know.
But they're already
Why not?
starting
Why
to get
can't
the
we do it?
cap.
That sounds-
They
And
can't
they've
do
had
it,
this
though.
thing.
That's the problem. They can't do it. They cannot go
Well,
to an asteroid and mine it.
I have seen
Well,
Star Trek,
Don't
sir.
tell them that.
Why not? Yeah. All right. So, like I said, I missed the whole first part of the show. So, what is everybody's belief on A, the existence of intelligent aliens, and B, have we been to the moon?
Well, hang on. Before we get into that, let me finish what I was saying real quick.
Okay.
It's interesting that they announced this. This was a few years ago. They announced this. The Space Force has been a plan. Trump really didn't come up with that. That's been a plan for a long time. He's just the one who's actually pushing it forward. China has already talked about how they plan on having basically ion drive space shuttles that can just stay up there and fly around, blah, 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 blah. Whether or not that's true or not, that's what they plan on having. They plan on having a whole fleet of these things, which is one of the reasons, according to Trump, why he wants to do the Space Force, so we can get up there too. Now, if all of that is true and that asteroid really exists, which who knows if it really does or not, that would make sense as why there's it seems to be almost like a new space race with the private sector involved too, taking off right now.
Oh yeah,
I wonder.
Elon Musk is serious. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I wonder how much of that is just a scheme to drain tax dollars.
All of it.
Because, well, because if what
Seriously,
we know is
all
true,
of
there's no real way to get out of Earth. There's no real way to break our
Hold on, is this the asteroid that Goldmember was trying to pull towards the Earth?
No.
Because
it should be though. That
it's
would
made
be
of all
awesome.
this gold.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah. You know.
Anyway.
It's hilarious to me with the Chinese especially, because we kind of mocked NASA here a few times today, and many people have, because they don't do a good job. Now I know someone was talking about Kubrick bringing a director in, because I made that joke several times, but NASA doesn't do their nonsense very well. The Chinese were hilarious. If you've seen any of their space launches or their supposed moon landings, you can literally see the edging of the blue screen. Literally.
Yeah, it's terrible.
It's so terrible. It's obvious bullshit, right? And it's just funny. Although out of all the structures on the moon and Mars, which is a fascinating conversation, we'd have to do a whole nother show on. But I think we should do it because that's fun. This is my favorite one. I love this photo of the moon because that is ancient. That is Anunnaki for sure. I love it. That's awesome. Dude.
What are you talking about?
This is a photo supposedly leaked out of NASA from one of the unannounced moon landings that happened after the 77 shutdown. Was it 76? I can't remember. But
they didn't go after Apollo 18, I thought.
Well, I doubt. Who knows what the truth is? But I would say this is a leaked photo that's been around for a while, and it's a lot of people have spent a lot of time analyzing this photo, dude. A lot of time, and I just think it's a cool photo.
But back to Beowulf's question. We didn't totally touch on it. We've glossed over a little bit how much. Well, Model says we absolutely haven't gone to space, which I'm not disagreeing with him. That's just his opinion. I don't think space is what we think it is. I don't think space is a void, a vacuum, whatever they want to call it. I think space it's a little bit weird, but the ancients talked about realms. I think the space is literally just the space between those realms, and there's stuff there. There's energies there. And that's what distant stars are. They're what the ancients understood as realms. Planet, the root word of that is plane. Very similar idea. Now, as far as intelligent aliens, absolutely, there has to be. I mean, in any model of the universe, except for a solid creationist one where Earth is literally the center of the universe created by God, which is very possible. Every other model, it's unbelievably arrogant to think that there's not something else out there. It would be almost an statistical impossibility for it not to exist. So that's my opinion. I don't know about everybody else.
Well, now we've kind of shifted here, and it's good timing too because we need to end the show, and we're going to answer those two questions everywhere across the board. I just want to come over here, chat. Sorry about that today, guys. Usually I have the chat right in front of me and I can interact with it very easily, but today YouTube is not being friendly to me. Which, of course, the first thing they did was put a Wikipedia pop on mine because the algorithms are Area 51. So thank you very much, YouTube, for paying attention to me. I feel special now. And I'm sorry we didn't interact with you guys more. Next time, hopefully, what I will do is not put a controversial thing in the title so that I won't have YouTube popping on me, so I'll be able to do what I normally do. Nevertheless, I do agree with Mrs. Gaming the System, who says, Malin, let me look up here. The moon is obviously made of crumpled up balls of Malin's attempt at drawing feet. I agree. I agree 100%. But anyway, let me come back over here and let's answer that question that came in from Beowulf. Now, Thundera just did. So why don't you go ahead, DeWolf, and tell us, what do you think about these? Well, first of all, us going to the moon. Let's deal with that one first, and then we'll deal with the alien thing.
What? Yeah, I've got to say that even observation lends the fact that the moon is something that's out there. The fact that we can get to it, I'm all for it still. I think the technology is possibly simpler than what we might need to just to cross this small distance. So yeah, I actually think, and from some of the other things that have that we've done, the science that they've released, I think it's kind of hard to come up with all of that science and just make it up. So I believe that yes, we have gone to the moon.
Okay, and I'll give mine, and then I'll go over to Model 3, and then finish up with Beowulf on this first question. For me, I think we've absolutely been to the moon. I just don't think we've ever seen us going to the moon. I think that's what's the reality is. And whether we went to the moon in '69 or not, I think there's a lot of evidence suggesting we might not have. But we eventually did get there. We've certainly been to the moon. I think we're on the moon. I think we have bases on the moon. I think we're active on the moon. I think the American government is probably active beyond the moon, if possible, because the concept that came up quite early, with the moon now being a lot of people trying to jump on that bandwagon that the moon is actually within Earth's atmosphere, or at least a layer of it. I think that's very valid. But I think we have been to the moon. I just think we haven't been shown it. And then you can theorize and conspiratize all you'd like about why. And I think when it comes down to it, in the end, everything is about money. It's always about money. And
Always, always.
that's what I think. But what do you think, Model 3? Have we ever been to the moon? I know you said it already, but just clarify, please.
Well, if anything, everything that's been publicly released as far as photographs, the distance being over 250,000 miles away, that it's in a vacuum, none of that, I don't believe any of that. So now if there is a solid structure there that they can actually get to, I'm open to that they went, but nothing that has ever been shared with the public is legitimate.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's if they're, and that goes all the way down to everything about the technology, the rockets, NASA. It's all just to extract money from the human race.
It might well be, especially seeing as the UN just passed a resolution that now they are taxing us to breathe. They're taxing us for air. Isn't that wonderful? They found a way to tax us for literally everything. Anyway, Beowulf, you asked the question, so why don't you answer it? Do you think we've ever been in the moon?
Yeah, I think we have. I think the 1969 landings was a hoax. I think that was done because, the president said that you guys are going to get there before the end of the decade, and you were in a race against the Russians, so you had to be the first. I think that was all faked. But I don't have a reason to believe we haven't been there since. I think humans are very capable of doing things, and I think the science that they have put out, by now it would be too easy to debunk, like openly and readily, by the majority of scientists. And I love conspiracies, but when you get to the point where you need to have an absurd number of intelligent people around the world all towing the line, or the majority of them all towing the line, it becomes hard for me to believe. So the maths would be too easily debunked.
Yeah. No, fair point. But although it does bring up there is an interesting little point that was made by NASA recently, where they're doing, I think it's called the Odyssey project, which they're building something that looks just like the Apollo project. It doesn't look any different. And they were just doing interview with the news people and just talking about the project, saying that they've been doing a lot of testing because the real problem is going through the Van Allen belt, and it will kill people with radiation. And therefore, we're trying to figure out how to do that. And that young man had somehow forgotten that America has already been to the moon. That's a problem. But anyway,
yeah, the Orion project.
Orion, thank you. I knew it was an O. But that was a bit of a faux pas. But nevertheless, next question that you asked, Beowulf, which is a very good one for our show. Do aliens exist, sir? Let me
intelligent.
Let me clarify
intelligent
that
aliens.
a little bit more. Yeah, you're right. Do intelligent aliens exist that have visited Earth? Because I don't think anyone's going to argue that they're in the universe, at least the science we've been given, in the vastness of the universe, there aren't intelligent, billions of intelligent beings all over the place. That's not the question. That's not even a interesting conversation. But so the question is this: intelligent beings travel to Earth? Yes or no?
Who are you asking first?
You.
Me? Well, I'm a Bible believing Christian, so I automatically believe in extraterrestrial life.
That's true.
I just believe in angels, demons, God, etc., and they absolutely have visited the Earth. As far as like organic beings that were created or evolved or whatever on far distant planets, no way. I don't think they visited us. I do like whoever mentioned the idea that they might be. That's kind of cool. But yeah, no, I don't believe that. I don't believe that physical beings from other planets have visited us.
Okay, cool. DeWolf, same question.
Yeah. Oh, I have to add a special identifier onto this because I don't think it's whether or not there is intelligent life out there. There could be, there may not be. From my perspective, it's always spiritual, that there's a God element involved. So I would have to start with the question: if there was intelligent life out in the universe, what would its purpose be, and how does that correlate to our own purpose?
Okay, all right. Before I move over to the next person, let me read a few things here from the chat. Dennis Perrock says, "Are AFK, Walt Disney, Elvis Presley, and Prince all on the moon?" Fair question. Zach Hawkins says, "How about the fact that they lost all the original telemetry data? Whoopsie! Important documents disappear." Yeah, they don't even have the documents for making the Saturn rocket.
They don't even have the original footage.
Yeah.
Of the landing.
Yeah, it wasn't important, So they just got misplaced.
Why would we archive that when we could archive Nickelback songs in the National Archives?
Freaking
I don't really
government
understand.
bureaucracy.
I don't really understand the problem. What the complaint is here.
Zach says there are no aliens, but it's a fun thought exercise. Eric agrees. Cool. All right. What do you think, Model 3? Are aliens real in the context of my question?
Unequivocally, no. There's no outer space aliens, and there's very likely not even other planets.
Now that is all.
Model 316 is interesting. We got to keep these shows going so I can finally nail down what Model believes.
We just spent 2 hours, talking and tangenting off, and me constantly trying to bring it back to UFOs. It is a broad topic, man. And honestly, there's a lot of shows we can do on this, and I'm loving it. So, and we've been trying to think what we're going to do on Sundays. I think we found it, dude. We're going to be talking about this stuff, because getting into the idea of what is space actually made of, the fact that the ancients, just to touch on what I think Model 3 is talking about here, the ancients kind of universally agreed that space was water, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a religious person like a Christian, well, obviously you must believe space is water, because it says very clearly that God separated the waters of heaven and earth with a firmament, a dome. It says very clearly. But that's a whole
aliens are rubbish.
Yeah. Okay. Well, welcome. I'm glad you finally woke up, Booster, just as we're about to stop. But anyway, let me continue. Yeah. Thundero, aliens, real or not? In the context of my question, please.
In the context of your question, Booster distracted me. What was the context of your question?
My question is: has intelligent life from other planets visited Earth?
Absolutely. One, I'm a deist. I do believe that there is some form of divinity in the universe, and I would say that it absolutely has. We talked about how our DNA has actually been messed with. We don't know by what or by who, what force, but somebody did. So I do think that aliens, which, again, define an alien is just anything not native to this planet, have been here. Now, where they came from, I don't know. I don't know if they came from outer space, but again, I don't think outer space is what we think it is. I don't think it's a physical reality between us and the stars. I think it's very similar to what the ancients believed. It's more like an ocean. Now, I don't think it's actually water, but I think it's similar to that, but more of like a radiation or an energy field. And that's what things are floating in, quote unquote, if you want to call it that. So I do think that interdimensional beings, which is what they would be, absolutely have visited us. Now, whether you want to call those demons or gods or angels or just spirits or the hosts of heaven, as the Bible calls some of them, there's a lot of different interpretations of it, but absolutely intelligent life, as intelligent or more intelligent than sapiens, has been here 100%.
Awesome, interesting. And now, Booster, we're very happy that you've awoken finally, because you're a tired boy. You're actually working and playing the Pokemon Go, so busy. So we'll just kind of drop it down to two simple little questions for you. No, let's make it just one. Are aliens real, dude?
No,
Okay, all right, rock
that'd be
on.
stupid.
Don't be stupid. All right, there we go. Booster's
Chester,
opinion.
before we go, can I drop a trivia on everybody?
Sure, let me give my opinion, and you go ahead and give your trivia.
Okay.
And we can, we'll do some closing out. Everybody can give trivia if they'd like. Let's see. Let me just catch up the chat real quick before I give my opinion. Next week, Bigfoot. Now we're going to talk about that in a minute, guys. Cat R says, I tried to ask Model what conspiracies he believes in, but he told me he's not giving me spoilers. That's nice. Mrs. Game of the System said the real question is, do you think these life forms that visited us are scared of our warlike nature and are terrified to come back? Interesting. Cat
No.
R says, so keep the shows going. Absolutely. And Mrs. Game of the System continues with her point, and she says, sissy aliens. I agree. Asuka says Christianity equals aliens. Interesting. And I don't know why we keep sticking on Model 3 here. Model, can you do me a favor for the next show, dude? Can you
Sure.
please get an actual icon?
That's the real conspiracy. How is
Yes,
it nothing
it
but a
is.
void?
All right. But let me give my opinion. All right. So
Alien stole models icon.
maybe that's right. The alien stole it. What do I think? Well, here's what I think. I think it's separated into eras of time, right? Because if we look at, like I've said before, because I take everything from my background, which is anthropological, right? And if we look at every single solitary culture on this planet talks about aliens. I mean, there it is,
Yeah.
right? They all talk about beings coming from other places. And over time, those things have been refined into very tight modern religions, right? So if all the ancient cultures believe that there are actually aliens that visited this planet, why would we have to argue with everything they had to say? Were they just a bunch of idiots sitting there dreaming on smoking some kind of psychedelic? Maybe. But I think very
Well, there was a lot of
clearly
that. Yeah.
they believed it, so, and why not, right? As far as modern times go, I think it's a little bit more convoluted, because I believe a lot of the technology we're seeing is coming out of governments, particularly the American government. And now, where they got that technology from is, of course, an interesting conversation which we had. But
Tesla.
it's tough. That's a tough one. I don't know that I can really give an answer because I don't have enough data. I would say it would be cool if it were true, but that's about as far as I can go with that. So let's just go through everybody here, and you guys got to give final statements and stuff. And go ahead, Model. You start out, dude.
Yeah, in 1976, John Dykstra went to work for George Lucas in what would become Industrial Light and Magic, and he actually built, programmed, and developed the motion control systems that allowed them to film all of those special effects scenes. Does anybody know where and what he worked on before he went to Lucasfilm?
Space Odyssey.
You know, he worked for NASA and he developed the motion control systems, or was on the team that made the motion control systems that shot all the models of the moon, the track models of the moon. So that's where he came from. He brought that technology from NASA to Industrial Light and Magic.
Like I said, Space Odyssey. Yeah. Kubrick. It's all a fake. Anyway, sorry. No, I get you. That is an interesting piece of trivia. I was trying to be funny, but it was failing horribly. It's okay. It happens sometimes to me. Sometimes.
Well, that's where a lot of that was developed, was during the filming of Space Odyssey.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I love the Kubrick angle on stuff, because there are actually, just to kind of follow that up a little bit, there are actually comments from Nixon and various people in his staff. They were actually preparing to have that in play, because they say they prepare. I think they were trying to cover it up. They said that they were preparing actual Hollywood version of the moon landing, just in case something went wrong, because they didn't want to be embarrassed in front of the Russians. They've admitted that, but they said, of course, we didn't need it because we actually landed. But they've actually said that, and it's kind of interesting. Anyway, cool. Thunder, you got some final comments you'd like to bequeath your wisdom upon us, sir?
My wisdom. Pretty much just what I said. I think this topic is literally one of the oldest topics since man first looked up at the stars and realized there was something more there than just bright lights.
Sure.
And like Chester said, it goes back all the way back, literally all the way back to where we have recorded history. People have been talking about beings from the stars, whether they called them gods or just other people. It's always existed. So I really think it's pretty arrogant of us to just dismiss that because, and here's why, like Chester was saying, why would we dismiss everything they said? We don't dismiss other things they've said. We don't dismiss mathematics. We don't dismiss most historical accounts unless we've proven them to be wrong. Why would we dismiss that as just a myth when we have other things that we just take as factual?
Yeah.
Now, obviously, mathematics we can still prove today, and we have refined it and things of this nature, but how do we know that's not what the government's doing right now? How do we know their contact with these beings hasn't been refined to the point where it doesn't happen as much where people do it? Normal people have to have contact, and only they'd have contact. I just think that it's arrogant of us to assume that we're all that there is. I think the universe is too huge and too unknown for us to make that statement definitively.
Oh, very good. I think my addition to that would be the fact that billions of people communicate with aliens every day. It's called prayer.
True. True.
DeWolf, that was a perfect lead-in for you, sir.
It sure was. And it's interesting because we talk about whether or not we believe that there was a moon landing, right? And all those people, of course, were there and they saw it, and then it happened for years. And of course, then the space shuttle came, and now this continuation of the journey to space is going on, and people are still questioning that. And I find that interesting in the context of what you talk about with ancient things. I talk about Genesis, you talk about the Anunnaki a lot, whether or not people, then 100 to 200 years after that time frame, were they then questioning the conspiracy of what happened just a few 100 years ago, back when things were formed, right? And so how can we then look back at the thousands of years and try to understand and believe in what happened then in that information, if we can barely even get a hold of whether or not we landed on the moon, and yet there's all this technology and things together. And it's interesting going from Area 51. Also, that starts with a military complex, and then we have the space race, which is scientific, and whether or not aliens exist or not, and that leads us into religion and the government and the bureaucracy that it is with NASA. So I think there's a lot of different components, all the ways working together. And that's why it's good to have these conversations.
Yeah, no, sure. And it's a lot of fun too. It's enjoyable
It's fun,
to talk
yeah.
and to, just speculate. It's interesting. It's
Like-
what we should do. Yeah, good point.
Like Fox Mulder said, I want to believe. It's much better universe when we can believe. Imagine living in a world where you can't believe in things beyond our understanding. That would suck. It'd be so boring. Yeah. So yeah, I want to believe because it's fun. It helps make life more entertaining.
It does. And YouTube is really messing with me today. Come on, guys. All I did was write the word Area 51, you bastards. That's right. I got you. I'm deflecting and
They're on
shield
to us.
blocking over here, man.
Yeah, I didn't get the notification either when it went live.
Oh, the CIA is
what?
after me.
Did I?
No, actually, Booster, you know what, Booster? When I launched the show today, actually, YouTube made a decision and put up a Wikipedia link to the bottom of my YouTube page for people to go check out what Area 51 is. Okay, they did that today to us,
Oh,
and we're a little
they're watching
540
us.
some odd per people channel, right? That's not a
I'm
joke.
freaking
That
out.
happened. Anyway,
We've been found.
we have been found. So Beowulf, dude, give your closing comments, man.
All right. So scientists have never been able to demonstrate how we can get life from non-life spontaneously here on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The chances of it happening, even if we grant that it's even possible, and there's no science indicating that it is. The mathematical probability of it is absurd. And yet, when you ask people if they believe in aliens, they say, yeah, sure, there must be. Look how big the universe is. But in order for life to arise on more than one planet, the mathematical probability of that happening, every time you want it to arise on a new planet, it gets less and less likely that it could ever have happened anywhere. So that's my thought.
That is an interesting point you make. But I would say this, that from a Christian point of view, which I know you're coming from, a Christian point of view, nowhere in the Bible does God say that He didn't create other planets or other peoples
Correct.
elsewhere. It doesn't say this. Not matter of fact, He doesn't even specify that there aren't other gods. Matter of fact, God admits there are other gods. He just said, "Do not worship them before me." Right?
Yeah, the Bible says that they're not really gods. It calls them false gods. But as a Christian, as a Bible-believing Christian, I believe in the existence of life on other planets. That's not my point. My point is, I don't believe that they arose spontaneously.
Oh, I see.
And
I see your point. Okay, yeah.
I don't believe.
Yeah.
I don't believe, or I don't necessarily believe that there is intelligent life on other planets. But I mean, why would God create such a huge universe if He didn't intend humans to eventually reach other planets and go, oh wow, look at these plants, oh wow, look at these animals,
or maybe
all for His glory, of course.
Maybe it's just a big petri dish and He's just experimenting, dude.
Well, God's not like us; He doesn't need to experiment.
Oh yeah, well that's the extravagance of God, because there is a jungle somewhere right here on our Earth with a tiny little flower that's beautiful, and no one is looking at it at this moment.
And it gets you really high.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And
you literally can talk to God when you smoke it.
That's right. That's right. And that's a whole nother conspiracy theory unto itself right there, actually. The what is it called? That South American root they boil and drink, and they think they actually communicate with
ayahuasca.
Ayahuasca,
there
yeah.
it is. Yes. That's a whole nother show we could do right there. Very interesting one too. I would say
we could probably get Joe Rogan on.
That would be awesome. Hey Joe, come on, man. But no,
we're talking about DMT.
But here's the thing, though, with that, with the Christian angle. And let me finish everything I say before you guys start throwing heavy objects at me, okay?
Okay, go ahead, Chester.
Understand that.
Say what you need to say.
I'm going to say it.
Don't let me cut you off.
Yeah, okay, we're not going to let you cut us off, sister. I do have a mute and an eject button, which I will use. All right, Mr. Sleepy Eyes. All right, but here's the thing. Understand that the Bible. Let's just stick with the Torah. Let's not even get into the New Testament. That's a whole nother conversation. All right, the Torah itself. Right. Now that is taken from much earlier accounts, which are taken from earlier accounts, which they in themselves say they are taken from accounts from the antediluvian times. They're very clearly marked. Okay, so you're talking the Bible, the King James version you're looking at is let's see, from the King James down to Septuagint, down to the Torah, down to the et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're looking at a minimum of 7 to 9 times removed, and who knows how deep it is in antediluvian times as the stories were originally told. Okay, now the interesting thing that happens with these stories throughout time, if you read the different versions, which I have, by the way. Okay, and many of them in their original language, by the way. They are the same story. It's just the further back you go away from the Bible, or we'll just say the Septuagint, you find that they're more detailed and they become more down to earth, as it were, right? And the aliens that they're talking about, the gods that they're talking about, are not perfect. They are far superior to us. They are our creators, etc. Everything you know from Genesis is the same story, right? But they are flawed. They are not perfect. They come from somewhere else, and their purpose for creating us was for a matter of slavery, really, is what it comes down to. But here's the interesting point in that, because above all of that, in the oldest stories we have, they mention themselves several times of their God. You see, they talk about their own God because they were religious too. And they actually, in the Anunnaki script particularly, which I haven't seen this in other script, but in the Anunnaki King's List script, they actually talk about one of the members of their race actually meeting the creator of all. and having a conversation with him. So even the supposed gods, which that have come to light, that most of the references in the Old Testament are referring to the Elohim, right? Are talking about these Anunnaki or these, whatever culture they're coming from called them. All right. But they themselves actually believed in a superior being who created everything. So I think that's fascinating unto itself. It's beyond what you are reading in your book, but even the stories that have created to your book, they themselves actually believe in God too. What do you guys think about that?
I think it's a different show.
It is a different show. But no, because it's aliens, right?
I'd love to do a show on the Anunnaki and stuff.
Well, yeah, we could. That would be a lot of fun.
I'm open to anything as long as it's not from outer space.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll get that one. We'll get that in a point. Booster, do you have anything you want to add, dude? Is there anything you have to add to this conversation other than pie and beer?
I do have some thoughts on this matter.
Awesome.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
I think that the universe is a cosmic mistake, just a cosmic mistake, and any of our attempts to understand it is folly.
Okay, so you're a Darwinist. All right.
Boosters are edgy nihilist atheists. Just in case anybody didn't know.
That's cool. Hey, we need at least one.
Everything is nothing and nothing is everything.
Yes,
that's Booster's
right.
philosophy.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
It's just really easy to understand. Oh, nothing exists? Great. Attached to that. No more thoughts have to go into that one.
Yeah, well, we're just having fun, dude, having conversations and stuff. And of course, it's good that we have so many different opinions here. I love that, actually, because we don't want to sit in a conversation where it's like, oh, yeah, that's right, this person and that person. Oh, I agree. That's hot nonsense. We want to have this diverse opinion that we have here because it makes it a much more fun conversation. And of course, we have our chat as well, which has its own opinion. Let me see if I can find anything over here before we. But the last question of the day before we get out of here is, what's the next show, guys? So you think about that while I read a couple of these chats. Joe Rogan knows all about the plant lol. Yes, he does. Joe Rogan is a disinfo agent par excellence, maybe. So is Alex Jones. Just watched the Y2K broadcast. Yeah, I love Alex, though. He's fun. Eric says, did you see his show with Alex Jones? Absolutely, dude. That was nuts. It was cool. It was incredibly entertaining. And it's the biggest, most successful show Joe Rogan has ever had.
Can you imagine a guy like Alex Jones existing that is pure entertainment gold and everybody banning him? We're in a mad world, folks, because he is so much fun to watch.
Oh, yeah.
That's
too dangerous.
Conspiracy conversation. Let me keep reading here. Kat reads the Nude Testament.
Wait a minute.
I see you got to stay on that track. Huh?
Oh
Wait, Kat's a nudist? Wait a minute. I like this rabbit hole we're going down. We need to hear more about this in detail.
Oh, you should have seen
this
the
is a
D&D session we had the other day, dude.
for next week.
Jeez.
Uh-oh.
We will get into this deep.
We had nipples and everything, dude.
Well, and speaking of D&D, Chester, Kat and I do need to speak to you at some point.
Sure, dude. Awesome.
You're in
As
trouble.
you like. Are you guys enjoying it?
Absolutely.
Oh, cool, dude. I'm going to keep trying to ramp it up and do more interesting things, more description. But anyway, that's a different show. But yeah, that's a lot of fun. Yeah, you guys talk to me, no problem. Come say, just let me know what you want to do. Zach Hawkins says, Chester, you are taking for granted the word of folks trying to disprove something that it was a replicated story. No, I'm not. I'm just stating my opinion. We don't actually know history. That I agree with 100%. Mrs. Game in the System, Chester is making a new comic called Ignorant AF. Hey, I'm down, man. I do think that Mr. The Gaming the System would probably be a really good artist for that. Eric says, Dr. Michael Heiser talks about that. Really should check him out. I know this fella. I've seen some of his stuff. Eric, as a Christian, I think there are actual gods, and there is one God above all. Now, that's the point I was trying to make, was that the ancients, who were the gods, quote unquote gods, they believed in a being they called the creator of all. So I'm just saying, it's interesting that the gods had a god, I thought. Eric.
Well, in pretty much every mythology, the gods, as they know them, like the Olympians. Again, I go back to Greece because it's everybody knows Greek mythology. The Olympians weren't the supreme gods, not even close.
No.
There were gods way above them. In fact, Zeus was terrified of Nyx, the goddess of night. There was gods above them and beyond them, including the ones that created everything. So
Now,
that's a common theme.
You know, the interesting thing on that point, Thundero, is the fact that you're absolutely true, correct. All the gods that people can name from their, their pantheons, like, Zeus or Odin or Amaterasu or, whatever culture,
Mm-hmm.
they're actually, and here's the interesting kind of weird, quirky thing. They're always the third layer. There's two layers above them, actually.
The divine number. They're always three.
Yeah, it's weird, right? It's weird. And a lot of them also, when they talk about the number one, the top gods, it's usually three as well. There were three of them, not one. There's three. And of course, we know, as with modern Christianity, it's three as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is very interesting topic. But let me keep you on here. Let's see. Now people are just giving their opinions. Dave says cryptics or cryptids. Maybe he meant. Kat says no. Model is the nudist. Yes, that's true. That's true. Although I'm glad you're okay with his sexual advances. Thundera busted. Beowulf says, I've looked into Michael Heiser and I disagree with his findings. He emphasizes passages that speak of other gods, but ignore the passages which say clearly they're not gods, and that Jehovah is or Yav is the only for him, the only Elohim. I think there's different gods speaking at different times, right? Like, for instance, you talk about the Tower of Babel conversation. Well, that conversation, when we go back in time, we see that's a conversation between two god brothers, right? It's in the Sumerian tales, it's Enki and Leal are having that conversation. If we look at other times the Elohim is mentioned, there's a whole bunch of gods talking, and yet other times there's only one. So it's it just depends on how you look at it. And then, of course, in the Bible particularly,
No, Chester.
there are points where
No,
it
Chester.
is only God speaking. Huh? What do you mean, no, Chester?
I don't just somewhere. Just take any point that you've been making on there being multiple gods at some point, and I'm just going to say no, just because I can't stay quiet. So, all right, go ahead.
I know, I understand. I'm sorry to tell you, dude, the whole entire Babel story is thousands of years older than it is what was written in the Septuagint, and it's two gods speaking, and Leal and Enki. And they're having a discussion about what to do with the noisy humans that they created. Sorry, it's the same identical story. And it's not talking about a one God. But there are times in the Bible where it is one God speaking. So, I mean, that's the point I'm trying to make. Anyway, Beowulf says, I have to go, guys. Okay, fine. All right, so I guess we do need to go because I got to get ready for work myself. But what are we doing next week?
It's a good question. How deep of a rabbit hole are we going down here?
Oh, as deep as possible, dude.
Well, every show is going to turn back to the Anunnaki at some point because, of course, we have Chester.
Well, no, no, that's not true. Today was specific because we're talking about aliens, and that is a direct contact to aliens. That is an alien. The whole alien conversation is going back to that right now. We get into other conspiracy theories. It doesn't have any connection at all.
Well, what's the next big conspiracy theory that's
well, we've gone very celestial with our first one, being aliens, being most people consider them beings from outer space or whatever.
Yeah.
I'd say we go much more earthly.
How about hidden history?
We could do. That's what I was thinking, actually. The reason I was thinking about it is because one of the guys I follow on YouTube is one of the leading scientists on that topic, Dr. Forrester, and he makes some compelling arguments, and I think it would be very interesting to dig deep into that.
And what do you mean specifically? Because I could see myself going down.
He's talking about,
and you're going to make DeWolf right, and I don't want DeWolf to be right.
He's talking about ancient technology, lost technology that
it is Anunnaki. Oh no,
it's pretty obvious.
Human history, human origin. Civilization.
It's pretty obvious that the ancients had technology for moving things that we don't understand. Because some of the things that the stones that they have moved it would be hard to move today. They're so huge. So something was going on back there. That's what he focuses on, is ancient technology. Lost technology.
Sure. Yeah. Precisely cut stone and
with
I see what you
like
guys
to the
talking
precision
about.
that would be
Okay,
hard to
that's
do
very cool.
today, even with our modern technology and laser cutting. Like it's
Well,
that.
don't talk
precise.
about it now.
I know. I'm just saying. Oh, it's a deep
Okay.
rabbit hole. Trust me.
So hidden history, and I will do
Mhm.
my best to keep everything focused on Egypt and not Sumer. See, I can do it. I can do
There
it.
you go. Yeah, that's what he focuses on is ancient.
Egypt,
Yeah.
South America, maybe Turkey.
He stays in the pyramid belt, is what he calls it. Basically, where you find pyramids, largely the main areas that people think of as pyramids,
Mhm.
is where he tends to stay. So South America, Egypt, and then obviously there's all kinds of ancient
Southeast
stuff in
Asia.
Turkey. Yeah,
Oh, cool.
so that's where he tries to focus. But I mean, we don't have to talk just about him. He's just one I thought of because a notification popped
Oh,
up
no,
for
no,
him.
no
while we were
problem.
talking.
So, hidden history is the topic for next week. That sounds awesome to me. Yeah, hidden history sounds like a lot of fun, and that's a good one too because we don't necessarily have to get into religious conversations with that one and have heavy objects thrown at me because we don't want that to happen, right? So, but anyway, thank you guys all for coming. I see George popped in here at the last moment. Hello, George.
Hey, George.
Hey, hi, everyone. I really enjoyed the whole talk that you guys did. It was amazing. It was really eye-opening in some places. And I just have only one comment regarding the moon.
Mhm.
Is there's no way a spaceship can go to the moon with tin foil on its hull. It's
Oh, I
just
see.
Agreed.
impossible.
Agreed.
The thin walls. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
An 1/8-inch thin aluminum. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't touch them walls, man. Don't touch it.
And
And it's funny
technically
because
speaking,
you see photos of them leaning up against that wall, by the way. Have you ever noticed that?
Yeah.
Some of the inside
Well,
of
just
the
the-
cockpit?
Just the pressure, the air
Yeah.
pressure. You could not pressurize an 1/8-inch thin aluminum.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, you
That's
can.
all.
It's only 14 psi.
Oh, well, there you go. See, DeWolf is there with the information. But we have seen them leaning up against it, dude. How are you going
DeWolf's
to
in
be?
on
I mean,
it.
come on.
and
In
if I can-
a complete vacuum.
Because
We'll
it's
see.
not aluminum foil.
Confirmed.
it's only a 20-mile straight line to orbit, apparently. So for them to struggle to get 20 miles, past Earth's gravity, I find that hard to believe.
Yeah. And we should have talked more about the Aurora project because that's pretty interesting. But anyway, we can't now. It's
Oh
down.
yeah.
It's just too much to cover, dude. It's too big
There
a
is.
topic. Aliens is huge, man. And we'll have to. I'm sure we'll do shows later that will go into more nuanced looks at various different points because this is fun. It's a lot of fun. I'm enjoying it. Hope you guys are too. But anyway, with that said, we really got to get out of here. Thank you all for joining us for this 2.5-hour stream. I do apologize for being misunderstanding that daylight saving time is not on the spring equinox as it should be, but 2 weeks earlier. Not even 2 weeks, an odd number of days early. So yeah, America's busted. Anyway, thanks guys. Later.
You're very well.
Later.
Bye.